Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Board. April Fools. It is April 1st, 2025. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Warrant Committee as we approach our annual town meeting. This evening on the agenda, we have a full, we have the entire warrant on our agenda for discussion. And we are very fortunate to have Amy Dexter and Nick Milano here to discuss the warrant with us and go through some of the nuances and the important things I'm going to be asking town meeting to consider. So all that being said, Ms. Dexter and Mr. Milano, if you'd like to come up. Thank you very much for being here.
Hello again, thank you for having us.
Our traditional crunch prior to our annual. So one thing I should do before you start speaking is I should probably have Karen call the roll. So Karen, if you're there, if you could call the attendance.
Sorry about that. Yes, I can. Hang on. We have Tom Caldwell, Steve Rhines, Lori Connolly, Liz Dillon, Jay Fundling, Allison Gagnon, Andrew Coe, Macy Lee, Peter Mon, Brian McGuire, Ron Sia, and Judy Steele. You have a quorum. And Allison, if you could accept the invitation to become a panelist, you can speak and vote.
Thank you, Karen. Again, thank you everyone for being here. So Karen, if you could you push the draft warrant up on the screen for us, starting with the article,
Sure.
Article 1?
Sure, just a minute. You see that?
Yes.
She emailed it to us today, right? Or yesterday?
Yes. So if everyone on the committee can just pull up your copy. Is everybody ready? Okay. So, Mr. Milano, Dexter, the floor is yours. We have Article 1, which is a traditional article we have to act on the report of the town accountant and town officers and committees. Anything in terms of this one?
Not much color commentary to add beyond what you see. This is where other boards and committees may request time at the town meeting of the moderator to update the town on work they've done. I think last year, the Fire Station Building Committee provided an update, as well as the Equity and Justice for All Committee. So it's just a mechanism for that to happen, as well as to accept the annual town report, which we are wrapping up this week and we'll have printed and mailed to town meeting members in April.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
for some motion, for some of them, would it be appropriate to make motions and vote as we go? I realize saying for some of them is a very subjective, tricky thing to say, but
Well, I'm mindful of the speaker's time.
okay.
So why don't we just kind of go through as many. So if we could move, thank you though, Jay, very much. If you can move on to Article 2, and this has some significance in terms of this budget, if to appropriate money voted at the 2024 meeting to the reserve fund. So
Yes, so this article is a recent addition to the warrant at the request of the school committee. So Select Board added this to the warrant at the request of the school committee to provide additional funding within fiscal 25 in light of some of the financial challenges the school department's been having this fiscal year. The warrant, or the article, would put the money into the reserve fund, which is under the control of this committee, for approval for transfers out of. And we would anticipate the school committee would come before this committee at some time in June, most likely to request a transfer out of it. I will note that the school committee's original request was $1 million in free cash. The select board felt more comfortable with a $700,000 number, which more accurately reflected the school department's projection as of right now is where they expect their fiscal 25 deficit to land. So if approved, this would appropriate free cash into the fiscal 25 reserve fund, so for this current fiscal year, under the control of this committee for extraordinary unanticipated costs.
Okay. Any questions, committee? Okay, thank you. Just on to Article 3, the treasurer's article.
Yes, this is a typical annual renewal in terms of allowing us to keep deposits at banks and the arrangements accordingly.
Okay, and one of our more traditional ones. No questions, I take it. So this is
I
Article...
had a question on the last one.
Sure, Allison.
So the free cash, once appropriated, can that free cash be spent for is this for special education or is this for anything, any position?
This article would put it into the reserve fund, which is an account allowed under Mass General laws. That's under the control of the Finance Committee of a town, and in this case, the Warrant Committee. And I think the statutory language is extraordinary or unanticipated costs. It could be for any department, really. Typically, we'll come down and request some year-end transfers out of this fund, whether it's snow and ice for the DPW, or just unexpected costs in other departments. So it's available to any department of the town upon approval of this committee for those extraordinary unanticipated costs.
I'm sorry, can I follow? So you said for any department, but I thought it was for the deficit for the schools. I'm confused.
The school committee requested it for that purpose, but they said rather than appropriate it directly into our budget, we would be happy to have it appropriated into the reserve fund, and then we will come to the warrant committee to explain the request for the transfer. So yes, the school department would be interested in coming down and requesting the transfer out, but at this time, their request is merely to have the funding available in fiscal 25 if needed, and if it's needed, they'll submit a request to the warrant committee to transfer it out.
I'm sorry, so but they need the money but they're going to wait to request it out until June so that it doesn't hit their budget. Can you explain why that is a better way of handling it than requesting it so they have it in their budget now?
I don't necessarily know exactly their full thinking. I think they're looking for, they're welcoming the transparency, the opportunity to make that request in front of another board. From my perspective, it also doesn't just deposit the money in their budget to be spent, whether needed or not. So I think this puts a little bit more control on it. And it just gives another layer of approval that they'll need before they can continue to spend this allocation or any allocation out of the reserve fund.
Okay, so that makes more sense. But so if they needed positions or for any other, they would have to get the approval first before they can spend it, if I'm understanding, or once you take the money or request the money, or is it at that time where they request it for like the positions or whatever they may need it for? They have to do that prior, correct?
Yes, they should request the funding before their budget is in deficit, if that's the question.
Okay, yeah, I think so. I mean, it's confusing that the funds would be spent and then they would come back and ask for the appropriation of the amount they need because they would have already been spent. So my understanding then is that they would have to go prior before, I would assume the language makes it clear that if they needed the money, it would need to be appropriated before they spend it.
Yes, I think that's right. I don't know what their game plan would be in terms of timeline, but we can follow up with the school committee on that piece.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I know that they're already in a deficit to get through the year, so I'm just trying to, and they need the free cash, so I'm just at a lack of understanding of if it's because of the override, or if is it because, they need the money from the free cash, that's why they went up to go request it, so that's why I'm just confused on the process.
It's only for this fiscal year. It has nothing to do with next budget year or the override. It's within the fiscal year 2025, which is our current budget year. At June 30th, the money is unspent in this fund. It closes out to next year's free cash.
And Allison, I think when they were going through and trying to determine what they could do to close that original $2.3 million deficit in FY '25, they, did the NEC program, they did a number of things. They were looking at other issues. They went to capital in order to get the money allocated for Chromebooks to get put in the operating budget. That was on this list. They had a $388,000 number that they thought they would get from, I think it's some sort of reimbursement from the state, which is like an extraordinary reimbursement that they could get. The number was $688,000 and change that they still potentially have a shortfall of.
And this is Amy, if I could just add, I believe their numbers are projections at this point. The superintendent for business and finance has projected where she believes they will be at the end of the year. Therefore, this 700 or the 688 is an estimate at this point.
That's how I understood
You
it
mean,
too.
when would they need to do this by, though? Like, if they already know the amount? I'm just confused in the process, and I think I've listened to you before. It's like, I just don't understand why it's being done this way.
Before July 1st.
Well, if they get the 388 from the state, if there are 4 positions that leave between now and then, and they don't end up rehiring, there might be some savings. If something else triggers and there's savings, if the electric bill comes in less than it was, if any of the other costs that they incur are lower, or if they get additional offsets from the state, then I think the number could be different. So instead of just asking for 700 of free cash and putting it in the budget, they opted for the reserve account. So they weren't just taking it, and as Nick said, like putting it in their bank account so they could just use it. We're going to wait and see what happens.
And if I could just add another thing. Legally, any department has until July 15th to get approval for a reserve fund transfer. And oftentimes, because it's extraordinary and unanticipated, there's no control over the spend, right? Like, they have to do it, it's extraordinary, it's unanticipated. So oftentimes, these requests do come to the warrant committee in their real numbers. They know what they are. And I believe the reason why they suggested it go into the reserve fund rather than their budget is because they do understand that the public is, kind of, some people have expressed concerns. So to Nick's point, it's more transparent. There's some control over it, whereas the warrant committee will have to vet it and decide if it's extraordinary and unanticipated and if it's approved. Mm-hmm. So it seems like the logical place to put it, as well as if you appropriate it to the departmental budget, it's part of their budget. This is not. So I think that was the other reason.
Didn't they ask for more originally and it was reduced? They asked for $1 million, so this got reduced. So there's some gates they have to go through, right? There's an outstanding water bill we've been overcharged. That's still outstanding. Those positions, they're retiring, so that's attrition. They know they're going, but they're accounting for that because of their different states. They're where they got to recognize that for costs. That's going to happen. The other thing from the state reimbursement, they don't know what that is. So there's a lot of ifs. I mean, this is a vulnerable number because they don't know, right? There's nothing that says we're going to get reimbursed here, we're not going to get that. This is risk. So I think they're doing this because of optics, and they're going to stick it in there, and if it can roll back into the budget. That's what it feels like to me. There's a lot of ifs here. It's not a solid plan. As a taxpayer, I say that.
Any follow-up?
I have a question.
Sure, Judy.
Thank you. This, rounded off figure of 700 or whatever the exact figure will be, the only board committee that has to approve this transfer is the warrant committee? It doesn't go anywhere else other than the warrant committee?
Correct.
And we would do that, so we don't have to, we can do it any time and not necessarily in conjunction with the June town meeting?
Correct.
Thank you. Oh, one last. I think the other night when we went so late at night, I got confused at the end because I was really tired. Tom, if you can help me, I think you said somewhere there was 700 that was gonna be amended to 0. Can anyone, that's not this, is that correct?
So as part of the planning around the override, we had discussed establishing a special education reserve fund with $1 million in free cash. Because of this request from the school committee, while we propose in the warrant to establish the special education reserve fund, we don't propose to put any money into it. So that $1 million in free cash is essentially being held in abeyance because of potential needs for the school department budget in fiscal '25, 700,000 of which is here before us being appropriated. The balance will remain unappropriated free cash as we continue to monitor and see what happens.
So to clarify for me, we're going to
Recording in progress.
to let that go through a town meeting, which will vote on the need to establish one of these special reserve funds, in this case to use for sped education
Recording
only.
in progress.
And that'll be there, and then in subsequent budgets for future years, then a certain amount of money will be appropriated in. It'll already be there.
Right, the intention is to establish it, and then potentially in future years, if funding is available, to put money into that special education reserve fund to have as another resource in future budget years. That is, yes, the intention for now.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Anyone else comment to the article? Thank you for your questions. Okay, on to Article 4. It's our capital budget for bonded and non-bonded items. It's over 3 million. I'm 5 million, Nick. These seem pretty, are there anything outstanding or
Yes.
unique? Yeah, Brian, of course.
Have these already been ordered?
No, none of, while department heads might have been talking to vendors, no orders are placed, no POs can be submitted until July 1.
I mean, I know I did the library budget, and I didn't come up with, they didn't talk about a generator, but I kind of missed the process on this, because it's on a different budget, it's on the capital budget. But, I know I have questions, like there's two generators in here for like 675,000, and how necessary are they? I mean, I wouldn't think power goes out much around here. I know you
You'd
can't
be
answer
surprised. So we have had routine issues with the library that Eversource is looking into. It's not necessarily a reason for it, but it's been a goal of the trustees all along was to, when the building was built, to have it serve as a place that could withstand outages to continue to provide services. It's a 20-year useful life, so it'll be borrowed over the duration of that. The Tucker School does not have a generator at all, so when they do lose power, school does have to close, unlike some of the other schools. So Tucker and Glover are the two that are without generators at this point, so that is an investment into that facility to maintain it, again, in case of those
Yeah.
instances. Other than those two, the items here are largely replacements. Those are the two kind of new things in this year's capital budget. Vehicle replacements, the $1 million that we do in roads a year, regular improvements to the town and school facilities that we've been working on, keeping up with replacing the fire engines on that 5-year cycle that we try to stay on. So everything else is replacements. That caught your attention. Those are kind of the new investments that are included in this capital budget.
So, I'd ask, on the fire engine, because I know that the chief was in here, I asked him, how many hours are on it and how many miles and hours, and he didn't know. But, I don't know, are we replacing it because it needs to be replaced or because it hit a time? Did somebody do an analysis? I know one of them got a new engine, so I don't know if it was this one, but if it was, I wouldn't want to replace it. But,
Yes.
is it in condition enough? Been analyzed by a mechanic that says this should be replaced?
Yeah, the preferred life cycle is 15 years of active service, and then set it aside as the replacement engine. That has been our routine. We've been able to get onto that track. If we're not, we had a $35,000 repair this year. So once they get past that 12, 13, 14 year mark, that's when we start to see those much more expensive repairs based on the hours and the service that they see. We're asking for this now to get the funding lined up so the chief can order it. We don't expect it to arrive until 2029. So it's part of that kind of game plan as when do we want to take one out and roll this one in.
Do we know how old that one is?
20 years is, I
Yeah,
believe.
it'll be, by the
It's
time
20
it's-
years now?
No, it is 11 years now, and by the time it's replaced, it'll be at the 15-year mark.
Oh, I thought you said it was older.
There's a replacement engine, that's the older one,
Okay.
I believe, right? Macy?
I have a question about the administrative vehicles. There are two of them. What's the purpose for those two cars, and who will be driving them?
So we have a number of quote-unquote administrative vehicles here at Town Hall for the building department, the health department, the Department of Public Works. So they're shared for those. The inspectors are out daily, and then the engineering department will be out on going to project sites. Those have a very long duration because they're minimally used. They're going around town. Our goal is a couple electric vehicles there. We have several Nissan Leafs already that provide that, just get driving around Milton. They don't go very far and aren't used a ton. So that's the purpose of those.
And do you have two existing vehicles right now? Did you say one?
Yeah, they are all about 2013 or older.
Okay.
So we're just looking to replace two now.
Okay.
There's about 8 to 9 of them here at Town Hall that we're looking to slowly replace. It's not it's not that we have to replace all of them right now. We just want to get on a cycle of replacing those before they start getting too beyond their useful expectancy there.
If they're not regularly used, do you know on top of your head what the mileage is on these two, on the current cars?
I would have
now?
it, and I can follow up with that. I just don't have it at the.
Okay.
at my
I'm just curious as to whether the replacement is necessary at this point, especially given what you just said, that they're not used regularly, they're just used to do inspections, but the mileage.
It's more about their age
Right.
and what they've been through, less so than their pure mileage, because they're,
Okay.
I think, I would have to pull these two specific off the top of my head, but we're talking about a fleet of town hall vehicles that, like I said, I think the youngest is 2013, and they're older from there. I think there's an 05 Taurus driving around back there, so.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because mileage is, to me, a determining factor on the car. It could be a very old car, but it only has 10,000 miles on it, and it's really,
No, the lead
Yeah, it's
mechanic
not
has
the
come
age.
to us and said,
Okay.
it's time to start looking at these administrative vehicles and replacing them. 'Cause they don't make it on the list usually, but they're getting to that point where we need to.
thank you.
Sure.
Andrew?
Are we able to talk about non-bonded capital items
Sure.
right now? I've got a number of questions, starting with the bonded capital items. Phone system upgrades. I think in general, digging into town technology, I'd love to see them move away from purchasing 10-year capital equipment when there are a lot of viable options that you could basically convert to OpEx. But the non-bonded capital items, question I had was the electric vehicle charging stations. Who uses them? Does the town have any electric vehicles?
Yeah, so we have 3 here at Town Hall, and the Council on Aging has another one. And then with the administrative vehicles, we'd be looking to add 2 more. So we have 1 EV charging station on the side of the building. We're looking to add another pair closer to the chemical building.
So the 4 vehicles, there are 4 town vehicles that are electric today?
There are 4 correct today.
Even the ones from 2003?
No, so those are, yeah, no, so
Oh, okay, I
of
was
the
gonna say they didn't
administrative
have
vehicles, yeah, a couple of the electric ones were bought maybe 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And then the Council on Aging bought one, was able to acquire one last year.
Sounds like there's a lot of cars. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I think with shorter local mileage, it makes sense to move to electric vehicles. The IT infrastructure upgrades and school technology, where do we see sort of the breakdown of what that, we're talking about
Yep, I
almost
can,
$500,000.
Share the backup with you. The school technology is user devices, primarily Chromebook replacements. On the town side, I'd have to pull up my notes from Capital. I just don't have them in.
And Nick, can I ask you a question about the chargers while you're digging that up?
Yep.
Can anybody in town use them, or really?
Yeah, it's their charge point. It's a fee.
You just swipe?
But yeah, if you have an account, you can use it. You can sign up for an account with your phone.
Pretty sweet.
You can use
I
it.
didn't know that.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that question.
I was wondering whether the town was going to assume the electricity bill for
No.
these. Okay.
You have to pay to use it.
Liz?
What is this transit van for?
That's the workers' van that at the Consolidated Facilities Department. It'll replace an older transit van.
Okay. I was hoping it would be a van for the Council on Aging. I know they've been trying to get a van.
They got an earmark through the state budget for
Okay.
a van.
That's good. And then in the past, we've seen, I don't know if it was on this, I think it was this one and not the DPW specific, but in the past, I had seen a line item for traffic engineering and mitigation, traffic mitigation, and I don't see that on here.
Yes, it was under bonded capital for, I think it was labeled, I don't know what it was labeled, it was $100,000. That appropriation hasn't been totally expended from this year. So we didn't move forward with an appropriation in fiscal '26 as we still have funding available out of
okay.
those prior appropriations in past years.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
While Nick's digging up, I did have some other questions. I think going back to previous discussions that we had, and also discussion that I had with Rob Mallett, and I think one of the things that I'd love the town see do is move away from having capital equipment, IT equipment, and move stuff into the clouds for a lot of different reasons. One, you don't have to manage the equipment, you don't have to power the equipment, you don't have to keep it cool. There's a lot more resiliency behind it. And the other thing that specific to your department is I'd love to see a plan to either start putting away money or budget money to get invest in systems that allow us to have a little bit more insight into the town accounting system to give us more visibility, real-time information that'll help us sort of parse through, reduce the workload on Amy and Ms. Dexter, and also give us, each department, the information they need to be a little bit more efficient with their tax dollars.
No, we agree.
I know it's tough to do that now, but the longer you wait, the the more drawn out the pain is.
No, we hear you on terms of our own technology. It's something we've been looking at. We've been working on some HRIS platforms that we can move to help out on the HR and payroll front, and then work more seamlessly in terms of, accounts payable and our general ledger software from there. In terms of the capital, so the phone system upgrades are for servers, and to move the phone upgrade is to move it totally into the cloud, away from a local system. Software upgrades are just, it's an account to enable us to invest in upgrades, primarily Windows 11. The infrastructure upgrades is broad, but it's generally computers, servers, cameras is what will be paid out of that capital account. And on the server front, we've had those conversations. We should continue to have those, and we can loop in with Rob through this process going forward.
I just had one question, Tom.
Yeah, sure, Ron.
Nick and Amy, thanks for coming. I just had a quick question on some of the vehicles. If we retire an existing vehicle that's operating, do we sell it, and where does the proceeds of the sale go?
Generally, they're trades. They'll trade it into the vendor when we acquire a new one. That's generally the most seamless way to do it. The Department of Public Works does get authorization in their budget to sell old equipment separately if they don't feel the pricing is well enough, and then it's public procurement to dispose of old property. That it's just a public bid process to sell old equipment from there.
Okay, I know a couple 14-year-olds who will be looking forward to seeing that fire truck on the auction block.
Brian, I think.
Yeah, so I did work for a trucking company for years, and we would never, retire anything without, you'd have to get a whole, analysis on what you were getting rid of, how many miles on it, how many hours on it, how old it was, and maybe some mechanic that said, this thing should get retired in the next year or something. And we did keep trucks. We had nothing below 200,000 miles, but we were able to get 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 miles off a lot of equipment. These were running every day. So, I don't feel like on some of this we have enough information on what the year or the mileage or anything to see if you should replace it. I just question it. And then the fire truck sticks out. It's $1 million. But here it's saying 20 years. I don't know. I don't know how many hours are on the current one. What's the projected time it's going to be at? Only 15 years. Doesn't seem like it's that old, but I don't really know. I mean, maybe somebody does better analysis on it, but I would just.
Can I just?
Yeah.
So just for, not sure everyone's aware, but there's a capital improvement planning committee that has a representative from the Warrant Committee, which is Lori, a representative from Select Board, Planning Board, Library,
No, consolidated.
Consolidated Facilities, the School Committee, 2 at-large members of the community. So there's 9 voting members. We've met all fall. We have a lot of documentation that has come in from department heads with their capital requests. We've vetted it. We've talked to the department heads, gone through everything. Nick's been at all the meetings. We've done projections on the debt service and what it would do to the debt service budget. So if you're interested in seeing any of that, I have all of that. I don't have it with me right now, but I could give you access to.
No, I'd be
that
curious
stuff.
on the equipment. What it
It's all
was,
triaged
what was that?
by the lead mechanic in terms of, based on his experience with the vehicles, the wear and tear that they are under, what needs to be replaced and when, and we're not, there was a lot more that they would ask for than is being funded, so we're just, what floats up to the top is what is from them. The biggest priorities based on what they're seeing is where money is being spent on vehicles, which vehicles will add the most leverage to what they need to get done. The administrative vehicles, I've pulled up the years, so 09 and 2010 are those 2 vehicles. So they're in a place where we're putting money into them on a regular basis.
Which ones did you say?
The administrative vehicles.
Yeah.
So it's in, 2010 Ford Escape, a 2009 Ford Fusion. So they're at a place where they're costing money on a regular basis. So we're looking to move away from those, and the rest of the vehicles are triage based on where Charlie Colligan and his team down at the garage are identifying where we're putting money into vehicles where it's time for a replacement and time to request that replacement. So that's the analysis that DPW goes through to generate their list, and then it's vetted by the capital committee from there.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
And the list
to
is a
see
lot
that.
longer.
Yeah. I'd just be curious to see the information on these that they're saying they're trading in.
Could I make a comment
Sure,
on
Judy.
on a vehicle? Thank you. At the Board of Health last year, they had a vehicle, and they went out to do an inspection. They put the gear into drive, and the car went backwards. And so they tried it a couple of times, and it was still doing that, and they brought DPW down, and it was still doing that. So just as an example of when vehicles that really don't leave the town borders time out. And so they had no vehicle. It had to be pulled, and they had to share another vehicle that was EV, and sometimes when they had to go out, someone didn't put it on charge. And so it gets complicated down there, and if I hadn't been with the Board of Health on reviewing their budget, I don't think I would have known about that. But just a little, and it was an old vehicle. And just things happen, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Any other comments on the capital? Article 4?
Just on the generators, would you know why they think they need generators? Do they need them?
I think from the standpoint, like what Nick was saying, all the schools should actually probably have generators. And I remember last year, we did not, we ended up not getting the did we?
We didn't
Not
do
any of them.
Any of
Yeah,
them, right.
They've
we
been on
pulled
the
it
list for years.
For years and years.
The
and then-
request has been rolled over year after year after year.
And the feeling was that, like, the schools should have generators because we don't want to shut down the schools. The library, again, has been on the list forever to be able to keep the building running in the case of, power going out. However, also know, as Nick was saying, that that area in town, the power goes out constantly, like daily. And it's a quick surge because it happens across the street where I work. It's crazy.
I wouldn't say it's not a critical facility that absolutely needs one. It's a nice to have. It would be a nice, backup for that building. I wouldn't classify it as an absolute dire need, but I think we've been able to work in with the debt schedule to accommodate that request that the trustees have been making for a number of years. And they've talked in the past about supporting some of the cost as well.
So a generator, then you need I can't remember what they're called. If it just flicks on and off, like if everything goes down, then the generator gets it back up, but there's a unit that they need to keep it like going. I can't
Transfer switch?
What?
Transfer switch?
No.
Transform?
But it keeps the power steady. And they usually stay on for like an hour.
Yeah, and this is the total project cost to install it, have it operational as it needs to be. It's not just the piece of equipment. It's the generator project, I think, would be a better, more elaborate description.
Right. I'll think of it. Yeah, I don't know, it just didn't seem a need, but.
Peter?
So is there will be the Glover School be the only school without a generator
After this, yeah.
after this? So school versus the library versus the school, was that a conversation that was had?
The committee felt doing 1-and-1 this year, and then we'll see where the requests line up for next year about the next school.
Okay.
Anything else? Capital? Okay. If we could move on to Article 5. This is a select board appropriation for our yearly audit. And I know the number's gone up a little bit. But that's a very typical thing we see every year. Is there any,
Can I take it?
if you
So.
did bump a little, and I know,
Right,
or
so this
10,000.
is, the firm that we originally had was Powers and Sullivan. The town has had them for quite a long time. We've gone out to bid in the past, decided to stay with them, change up the audit team. They've since been merged and then merged again. So they're a different firm now, but around the time of that first merge, which happened about a year ago, we went out and got some quotes from other firms, and they were honoring the current pricing, which you see here, which is significantly less than the other quotes that we received from some of the other firms. So we signed a 3-year contract with them, and the third year is the audit for fiscal '26, which is paid in fiscal '27. So we'll be looking to go out and, get some additional quotes or bids, probably not this summer, but the summer after, and reevaluate that. But it is expected that that price, when we do that, will probably go up significantly from what we've seen when we went out to bid on this.
Can you clarify, did you say we changed auditors, but they honored the old contract, or we stayed at the same?
They merged,
Yeah?
and they wanted us to sign that we were going to stay
Okay.
with the new firm. We said we're going to go out and get pricing to make sure we would like you to give us a quote, what they're going to charge us for 3 years if we do that. And we went out to, I emailed several different firms, probably 7, maybe got three or 4 quotes back. And they were all at least 20,000 higher
Okay.
in this bid. So we decided at that time, it was best to stay with them because of where we were in the year, and that we would reevaluate. And that's something that the audit committee will take under review
Thank you.
probably a year from now. And then the OPEB valuation is some procedures to, Jay can probably explain it better than I can, to do the valuation that the auditors use in the financial statements, and it's only required, the full-blown one is only required every other year. That's why you see it go from 10,000 to 0 to 10,000. And we use a firm called Odyssey, and they've pretty much kept their pricing pretty steady, and we've been happy with the service from them. So next year, that'll be 0, and then it will pop up again in 28.
I'm sorry. Is the school audit part of this as well, or is this just the town? It's everything. Okay.
That was my question. Because that came up with the school where they audited, but they
This
didn't seem like they were.
Yeah, so this includes the audit of the town's financial statements, which includes looking at the books and records for both town and school accounts. It includes an audit of the school's annual, what does she call it, year-end report, which is filed with DESI. They audit that and review that. It covers some procedures on the Milton contributory retirement system. We get an additional report on that. So there's a lot of things that go in it, and this is the total cost for all of those.
So there was, at the school meeting, one of the things that's supposed to audit is how they budget and what they're budgeting. And they didn't properly audit it last time. They said they were doing it correctly, but it didn't come out. But they weren't.
Say that again? They don't audit how they budget.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not what
in there. It's one of
Powers-
the questions. The report in the school committee asks about the budgeting.
To the auditors?
I believe, isn't that a DESI report? I don't believe it's from our audit report. I believe it was a DESI report on the town, on the school
Because
finances.
DESI also comes in and looks at,
Yeah, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Nick, I thought it was separate. I thought there was a separate budget for the schools to go deep, like a forensic dive into their budget from this, right? Was this like, this was top level, but they don't go deep into everything in the schools, right? That's not how I understood it.
they don't, They do sampling.
Right.
So they're not going, the only thing they really, I don't like the term deep dive, because
Well, they would- yeah.
they're not, it's not a forensic audit.
That's what I mean.
It's not a forensic audit, it's a financial statement audit. They look at the processes, the procedures, they look, you know, they'll take sample transactions and they'll ask for backup and make sure that everything is done within Mass General laws and GASB. The other thing that they do is they issue a statement of federal awards, and they have to audit in detail any federal award that the town or schools receive over $500,000, I believe. And the majority of that report is schools. So they're doing a pretty good dive into the federal funding, which is where like they have to spend within the guidelines of those grants.
Like Medicaid, would that be one, or like the lunch reimbursement?
School lunch is definitely one. The ARPA's on there. There's different ones. I don't know all of them offhand because they mainly deal with the school finance people on that.
It would be awesome to do a root cause analysis, deep dive, like a forensic budget into their schools. I think that would be something we should consider, given the 3-year run of the budget challenges, right? What's triggering these things? How can we fix it so that we don't repeat that as we move forward, I think.
So I can say in the financial statement, the financial statements for fiscal '24 were just issued yesterday, and it was a clean opinion, a non-qualified opinion, and they didn't know any significant deficiencies that would require mention in a management letter.
Nice.
I think the difference is that they're doing a financial, not an operational audit.
Right.
And because I had spoken to one of the former chairs of the audit committee and had that conversation, and I think an operational audit would have uncovered problems in the budgetary processes. Financial entries are being reported correctly. It's just that there are some other deficiencies in the process.
I mean, the question was, certain if the financial information was prepared in accordance with the budgetary basis of accounting. Example, modified accrual plus current year encumbrances minus expenditures of prior year encumbrances. And
That's the method of recording the accounting treatment. That's not the method of how they develop the budget. They're not looking at, okay, schools, what do you do to develop and prepare your budget? That's not what that means. That means they're looking at how we've recorded the transactions and where we've recorded them, and if we've recorded them within Mass General laws and governmental accounting standards and those type of things. They are not, I tell you, they are not sitting down and saying, how did you come up with this line item for special ed, or how did you develop? They're looking at the spend and that it's reported properly.
Yeah.
And
I don't know,
that
maybe I
it's-
don't understand it properly. But they says agreed upon procedures, obtain copies of current and prior year accounting ledger reports. With the school department general fund expenditures, including any outstanding encumbrances, and determine that the total expenditures reported on Schedule 1 of the end of the year consisted of current year expenditures and encumbrances less prior year encumbrances.
Is that are you reading that from something from,
From Powers and whatever they're
that's
auditing.
our auditor, so.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They're looking at the transactions.
But that was in relation to the budget. Maybe,
Well, they're looking,
I think one way to look at it is, they're looking that transactions are done in accordance with law. If the school department has hired more people than they have a budget for, that's not necessarily something the auditors are gonna
Oh, I
look for
get
as
that.
long as, so I think maybe that's where we're talking past things. So it's a little bit of a different set of analyses that are being done.
and because they do, they do sampling, if they were to pick a transaction and ask for the backup and look to make sure it had the proper approvals of, the business manager or the school committee or the select board or whatever, and they found inconsistencies, they would enlarge their sample and do more to see if it was like, you know, a one-off issue, or if we weren't following, you know, the proper procedures. Those are the things that they're looking at, and they do look to make sure that we're spending, like, when they're auditing the grants, that we're not spending that grant money on something that's not allowable under that grant.
Any questions? Liz?
Maybe this is sort of speculative, but do you know how much a forensic audit would cost?
I do not, but I would guess it would be at least somewhere in that ballpark, if not more.
In the ballpark of what, I'm sorry? Of the same?
Probably somewhere around 50 to 100,000, but I never had one done. Wasn't Brookline,
I feel like
they
there's.
had an estimate
they
of
were-
45 or 50?
I thought it was 75, but I don't know what that was looking at.
Brockton did one, right? Brockton also?
Yeah, I'm not, I have no idea what it would cost, and somebody would have to really define
Oh, what was the
what we're
question?
looking for and what
For-
the
How much
How
procedures
much
are
would it
gonna
cost
be.
for a forensic audit?
Forensic.
Because that kind of a loaded question, right? So.
Oh, yeah, the more you're looking for, the more it's gonna cost.
Right,
Well, but I think you need to know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
yeah.
You just don't say, can you come do a
So we'd need
forensic
like a
audit?
scope of services of what our definition of a forensic audit would be and what procedures we'd be looking for them to do.
Everyone? Anyone? Okay, can we move on to Article 6? It's a non-contingent recommendations for unforeseen cost items in departmental budgets.
This is set aside for collective bargaining, so as we are entering into a fiscal year with that, collective bargaining contracts will expire on June 30th of 2025. We do not have signed contracts with any of the town unions, so we set aside money in line with past contracts that would fund awards if and when they are agreed upon by the town and the unions. So our experience is sometimes these take even longer than a year, so we could spend $0 out of this in fiscal '26. We could spend all of it out of fiscal '26. It really just depends on the progress we're able to make and both parties working towards an agreement.
And Nick, which unions are they?
So all of the ones on the town side, there are 7. So police department has a superior officers, which is sergeants and lieutenants, and then a patrol officers, which is the patrolmen. Firefighters have 1 contract for firefighter, lieutenant, captain, and deputy chief. DPW, I'm sorry, there's a DPW, we call it DPW, but it's DPW Parks and Consolidated Facilities and Cemetery Employees. There is a union for the managers, so Milton Professional Managers Association, which is kind of a catch-all. It's got department heads, assistant department heads, dispatchers, local inspectors, so it's a little bit of everybody. And then there's a clerical union, it's just the reference title for it, so that's like the administrative assistant staff. I think that's everybody, right?
Library?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, library, yes. The library employees, other than the library director, are in one bargaining unit.
So I'm sorry, Nick, the police have 2, firefighters have 1, the DPW Consolidated Facilities have 1, the clerical union 1, and the library 1?
And then managers,
And managers.
7 altogether.
Thank you.
They are all in the same cycle, so they are all up June 30th.
Do you know the total amount of the payroll for the town? Including everything? You don't have it off the top of your head, that's okay. Never mind.
Sure, we do somewhere. In the workers' comp audit.
No, if it's not handy, don't worry.
I'll get
Another
it.
time, that's fine.
Or just town departments? Or town and schools?
Town and schools.
Jay Funling has a question, Nick. When you reach out.
This might be the first one we've seen tonight that has the non-contingent recommendation and contingent recommendation. Can you explain what we're looking at?
Yes. So normally, the way not normally, typically in Milton, the town meeting has occurred before an override question. So in that case, town meeting would be voting, one budget that would pass without an override and the second budget that would pass if the override is subsequently approved. Where the ballot question is happening before town meeting, we will know the outcome by the time we get to town meeting, but we won't know the outcome when we're writing the warrant. So we've repeated that contingent, non-contingent language, since as we sit today, it is contingent upon that ballot question. So the non-contingent column, and you'll see it repeated in other places, is the no override budget. The contingent column is what is going to be the incremental increase if the override is approved by voters. So that's the two differences there. So the non-contingent recommendation in this case, it's 562, 640. That'll get approved if town meeting approves the budget. If at the ballot, the override is approved and town meeting approves this article, it'll be a total appropriation of $590,000. And the difference is just that some positions on the town side are included in the override if they may not be funded. So we revised the projection downwards to account for positions that are caught up potentially in the override.
So Nick, the amount is, relies on the amount of employees.
Correct. We take, all the funded positions as they exist and then do an analysis based on what we expect the bargaining agreements might come out to be.
Can I ask you a question? Thanks for asking this question, Jay, because I didn't understand that. So are these the numbers if the override doesn't pass as well, or is this?
If the override doesn't pass, it's the non-contingent column.
Non-contingent. So make sure I'm looking at the same table. Okay, thank you.
So you'll add those two together if the override does pass, otherwise it's the base amount.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Employee benefits, Article 7.
Can we not move on? I'm sorry.
Oh.
Sorry. So if we appropriate whichever number, 562 or 590, and the contracts aren't resolved within the year, does this money go into an account because it was already appropriated to save it? Use it later?
I actually have a budget called wage set aside, and as the contracts settle, we calculate the real amount per department and we transfer it from the set aside to the actual departmental budget.
Okay.
But if on June 30th, we've signed 0 contracts and we have spent $0 out of this, next year's budget will reflect 2 years worth of a set aside, not just one. So this would close to free cash at year end.
Okay, that's what I was.
A whole year from now.
Right. Correct, yeah, no, I was thinking we just had it in the bank.
And last year, the $1,020,000 last year was because the manager's contract and the firefighter's contract was outstanding when we were going to town meeting. They had just been approved right around then, so we hadn't yet been able to zero out the wage set aside for the warrant and put it in the departmental budget because that's how long it took, and that was, within the last months going into their final year. So we just signed with firefighters and managers a year ago, and their contract's up now. So sometimes these can take a while.
Years, it appears.
So Article 7 is employee benefits. We've made a couple of changes to this article. And we've eliminated 2 other articles. Unemployment used to be its standalone article, and the OPEB trust used to be a standalone article. Since they're in the catch-all of employee benefits, we've rolled them into the employee benefits article. It's a question Jay's had a couple of years running, so we moved slow, but we got there in the end. So unemployment is cost of unemployment claims the town pays directly. Retirement is a contribution to the Milton retirement system in accordance with their funding schedule that they approved last year. The Milton retirement system is fully funded right now, so that's the cost of expected future benefits of current employees. The OPEB trust is, OPEB is other post-employment benefits, which is primarily health insurance for retirees. It's a cost we bear, as there is a benefit if you retire from the town for health insurance coverage. So we're paying into a trust to build up that trust to hopefully in the future be able to pay for those costs directly from the trust. The last item is a catch-all for group insurances, which is the Medicare tax that the town pays on a per employee basis like any other private employer, and then predominantly health insurance coverage for active and retirees. In the comment down below, we've broken out and with more detail the breakdown between active plans, retiree plans, and how that group insurance number is pulled together. We've also put in a little table that shows what's driving that cost increase this year, as it's a significant increase, and the headline there is both an increased census and higher enrollment, and also a 14% premium increase that we are currently budgeting for the plans to go up by. And I just should note, so town and school employees, if you don't have a teacher's license, you're eligible for Milton retirement system, so you're included in the retirement allocation. And then health insurance is covered by the town for, again, active employees. And retired teachers go into retired teachers' health insurance, but if you're a teacher in Milton presently, you're getting health insurance through that. So that's for both town and school health insurance coverages.
So, this might be the only one, or is one of the few that will be higher if the override fails and lower if the override passes, presumably because if the override fails, we're going to be laying people off, we'll be paying unemployment benefits.
Correct.
Okay. So it looks like you're assuming if the override fails, that alone will be 115,000 of unemployment benefits?
I mean,
that's what you got here.
I think this is I would say the one place in the budget where I have stress over because we don't really know. And that ties out to health insurance. We would eliminate some positions on the town side. The school will certainly eliminate positions on the school side if the override fails. What that translates into in terms of how many employees who have health insurance today, we don't really know. We know the positions that have been identified, but in terms of the school union, that those teachers have tenure rights, and there might be bumping where a position is eliminated, but the person in that position has rights and seniority rights, so they're able to bump out a person with lower tenure. So we ultimately don't know how that's going to shake out, so it's brought in a little bit of trickiness in terms of forecasting where these budgets will land. We don't know how many of those employees, if there are layoffs, who will get hired and how quickly will they get hired, and that'll affect the unemployment appropriation. So my perspective is we're looking at it almost as they're a combined resource, because health insurance presumably will be less if the override does fail. How much less? Question mark. Could unemployment be more if the override is not approved? Yes. How much more? It's kind of a question mark. So I don't have a good answer for it, but we've kept group insurance level, assuming same enrollment in both cases, just because we don't know how that will shake out. And if it is younger employees who ultimately are without positions in Milton, they're more likely to be either not on a plan at all or more likely to have individual plans rather than the more expensive family plan. So again, that's another factor that has played into our thinking a bit.
Okay, you got ahead of me. I didn't ask about group insurance, but that's okay.
Well, because it ties to the unemployment piece.
I guess the unemployment, I was thinking, so it seems to say that due to the layoffs, 66 in the schools and some number in the town would be 115,000 in unemployment, but in the average year we pay 100,000 unemployment. Do we involuntarily terminate 66 people a year in this town?
No, that's a much lower number, and those are generally longer lasting claims than those we might anticipate in a case like this.
Okay, so you're saying that, I'll call them teacher layoffs. I know that's oversimplification. If they get a job tomorrow teaching somewhere else, we're not going to be paying much unemployment.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I apologize. I don't think I understand. Why is health going up so much?
So there's several different factors. There are more people on our plans than have been historically. And if you look down to this table on the top and the bottom of the next page, so this just breaks out that increase. The premium increase, more people on the plans, and then there were 2 uses of one-time monies in the fiscal '25 budget that artificially lowered last year's appropriation. So if last year's appropriation was artificially low by about, what is that, $850,000, before we do anything else in fiscal '26, we have to put that $850,000 back in because we used a premium holiday, a one-period premium holiday, and some federal funding to offset our health insurance costs last year. And then on top of that, now there's 20 more people on family plans, that's expensive, and we're faced with that significant premium increase year over year.
Are you anticipating more people next year?
Right now, there is a reserve for fluctuations. We have an attractive plan, so in a case where health insurance costs are rising for everybody, private employers might have more ability to change their plan design than a public employer does, so our plans might become more attractive for folks who have the option of a private or a public plan. So we have a reserve for potential additional enrollments.
So you do think there's going to be more? It's because if you take out the 850, it's a 16% jump.
It's higher.
Seems like a lot.
No, it is because it's that there are more people on the plans in the first place. We account for additional people potentially coming on, and lastly, the premium was that 14%. So that's driving the bulk of it.
So can you tell us, I know we talked a month or 2 ago about what the consultants were recommending. I think that time they were recommending 14 or 13, and maybe you hoped that they would come in lower. Where do the consultants end up right now?
They haven't moved off the 14%. We have the February, at that time, we didn't have the February claims data in. That's in now. We're awaiting March claims data before we make a final decision. Our open enrollment for employees to change plans is May 1st, so we do need to make a decision by open enrollment before the town meeting. So right now, it's still at that 14%. We're hopeful that the February claims data is going to be better than it was. And some of the problematic claims for us this year have been on one plan, and then all of a sudden, in January, February, the other plan started to get more in the red than we had seen all year long. So it's not been, more information hasn't necessarily been better information, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Would you know how many part-timers are getting health?
On the town side, I don't think there are many. I'd have to double check. I don't know on the school side in terms of, they're eligible once they're over 20 hours on a regular basis. We have a few 30-hour positions, but mostly, we try to keep it at 19 or full-time.
Did I imagine it, or did you say you were looking into potentially high deductible plans also?
No, we would have to collectively bargain any changes to the health plans.
Okay.
That's not something that the town offers currently, but that's much more normal in the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
We have a deductible plan right now. It's $400 for an individual, $800 for a family. So you can get an FSA,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't qualify for like an HSA in terms of a true high deductible plan.
So I imagined it then. Or have
we probably discussed it in the
thought,
sense that that's something that we don't offer that
Okay.
people in the private market are more used to.
Okay. And if you did offer one, would the town be able to entice people into that by funding a HSA? Is the town able?
Yeah, we just as a private employer we could do a match.
Municipality could? Okay.
Yeah. And typically, I think when I've seen them, they've been rolled out at a higher match in the first couple of years and then and decrease from there. In a prior community, we offered one, and we had a handful of people sign up for it. It was in addition to the 2 other base plans, and it just wasn't super attractive at that time.
Anyone have anything else as to Article 7? You good? Nick, on to Article 9.
Yes, this is our personnel.
There's no Article 8 in the warrant.
What do I have? Did I skip? What do I have?
It's like
think I-
no 13th floor in a building.
Mine's an 8.
No
Okay, we fixed, all
article.
right. In the prior version, I do believe it went from
It's the
7 to 9.
personnel, yeah,
We
personnel.
finally caught that. So this is the personnel bylaw to list the positions, their classifications. By and large, this is tied to collective bargaining agreements. And under Mass General laws, you have to have a personnel plan. So we take the grades that these positions are, and their unions represent that on here. There are few non-union employees. They're captured in the unclassified batch towards the end. And then there are a couple others, like the Director of Public Works and the Library Director, I think the other two who show up within their departments. But by and large, this is showing the positions in their grades. And then at the end is similar to the collective bargaining set aside, we have a set aside for non-union employees and their salaries that's appropriated on a regular basis, or an annual basis, I should say.
Any questions on the wage adjustments? Okay. On to the next article. Public safety.
Yes, this is public safety, so it's inspectional services, fire, our emergency management folks, and auxiliary police and fire, and then police. I know you had Chief King and Chief Madden in last week. We did plug in the comments, provided some updates on the comment, and this is where we're starting to see the non-contingent, contingent show up. So for fire and police, they would all both be affected on both salaries and wages and general expenses based on the outcome of the override.
Nick, can I ask you a question? As to the failure of the override vote, the fire department, that was two positions they were going to add? Was that?
Yes, so both police and fire will have two positions unfunded through if the override were to fail.
And those are new. Those
are existing
current.
staff.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
There aren't employees in those positions at the present time.
Yes.
So that wouldn't lead to a layoff, but they would be positions that we would normally be going through the hiring process for at this right now.
Thank you.
Nick, can I ask a question? And I'm just trying to understand. If DPW, fire department, police department, they're performing within their budgets, right? Was it ever considered to not have them impacted by an override and have a straight schools override? Because they're the only area that seems to be struggling with making their budgets, and then these guys and gals are getting penalized. Was that ever discussed?
No, I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it more of in terms of the big picture on an override. So what's the best way to say it? So I think our costs, I appreciate the comments. We try to live within our budget. We do the best we can. Our costs are also outpacing Proposition 2.5. Like the town departments this year are going up, I think it's 4.7% if all their level service requests are made. So that outpaces the Prop 2.5% increase year over year. So I think we're all, to a degree, subject to these overrides. In addition, town employees are part of the health insurance budget, which is shooting up significantly, 14%, 15% increase year over year. So my perspective on it was that, and rather than try to figure out who gets more, who gets less, in a non-override situation, we both go back to zero, and then we add at the same percentage until the budget can't support it anymore. So what this is built on is that the town and school departments would go up 1.5% in a non-override scenario after the use of free cash and other things to mitigate those potential impacts. So all these town cuts amount to about $1,044,000, $1,045,000, and that represents taking our 4.5% increase down to a 1.5% increase year over year, and it's spread across a number of departments.
Gotcha. Yeah, and 2.5 is below the inflationary rate anyway, right? So you're starting behind the 8 ball. I mean, I've seen as high as 9% in some cases. So I was curious. Thanks for the answer.
Sure.
Any questions as to this one? Okay. Next article, general government.
I have a question.
Too late.
The chair, Lori.
It is. I'm going to see if I can get to 10. The building commissioner,
Yes,
is that position in?
that position is vacant but funded. We are hoping to re-advertise that in a week or two after a couple of things occur. So, if anybody knows the building commissioner wants to come to Milton, we are in need. Please come our way.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick, just as to these, and any member of the committee, if you want to chime up, is anything particular about these that we should focus on?
In general government, most, level service budgets across the board, obviously with all the town departments, the override impacts are, information technology. We dialed back his software budget for an infrastructure budget by $20,000. In the select board budget, the select board salaries and wages line includes the town planner and the assistant planner, as well as the HR director. We would leave the town planner position vacant for the year. So that's that $104,000 in savings there. The $4,500 in select board budget reduction is due to the Wildcat Den, which is the youth center that we would not reopen if the override were to fail. And then we would propose reducing the veterans benefits to bring that more in line with the historical spend out of that account. Although the former director, Kevin Cook, has been using that funding to engage in new initiatives as of late, but that is a reduction in veterans benefits. Otherwise, the budgets are pretty level. The election registration budget, as you'll see, that's our elections budget. We only expect one election next year. So it's a significant drop off from our current year where we had the state primary and the presidential election. So that was higher in fiscal '25.
Does anybody have any questions just regarding general government? Any member of the general government subcommittee want to chime in? You please do. And if just to reiterate anything about the potential cuts if the override fails.
Ever think about having the select board work for free?
It's up to the voters in the town meeting.
Just ask him.
I am not going to ask my boss to.
I wouldn't ask him either. I'm just curious. I mean, it's.
I don't know what conversations that have been had in town. I think it's pretty typical for there to be a nominal stipend for that position.
Can I Jay.
Sorry, I'm just noticing town reports is blank. Is that blank every year? Is that a mistake?
It's been rolled into the select board.
Yes.
That has been absorbed into the select board budget as we manage the town report.
Okay.
We didn't think it was necessary to have a separate budget for it.
I can't seem to find the salaries for the Warrant Committee on this.
No, I was just say.
It's a different article, but it's still not
Zero.
much.
Shadow budget. Nick, I just have and Amy, a question about the treasurer budget. Does it increase? Or am I? No?
Yeah, there's
Yeah, is there a different?
Employees moving around.
Yeah, that's what I had a question.
$53,000 wage increase.
I don't know if it was like additional administrative help or anything, or if you know.
I'd have to double check that, but we've been moving positions between the accounting and treasurer's office the last couple of years.
Okay.
So it may be the final remnants of putting the correct salaries in the right places. A bunch of her money did come out of her general expense budget into salary and wages to take a existing benefits eligible part-time position up to full-time. So there was a 30-hour position that is getting added hours.
Would that be like 37 and a half to full-time? And that would include?
No, I'm sorry, it's additional hours for a part-time employee from within the existing general expense allocation.
And that was up, like he or she is now 30 hours now?
No, that's would be in the new fiscal year if it's approved.
Okay.
Yes. The salary increase is mainly due to
Oh, and then Amy also points out that
it's not the payroll
there was a
position.
salary adjustment. So there's two things. So there was hours being added to the part-time staff, or in a small, there's a 10-hour position in the treasurer's office that we're looking to potentially add hours to within her budget.
Okay.
So that's one nominal change. And then when we hired the treasurer, the salary came in higher than the elected treasurer had been in order to attract and retain that position. So that position's fully funded through this account now, which had been not the case in the prior year when we set the budget last year.
These are the treasurer, it's all coming out of that one bucket. Okay. Thank you.
Where did?
Mr. Chair. Sorry. No, you had something serious to say.
It was budgeted at a lower number, and it was in the set aside.
Oh, okay.
I was just remembering that, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sure.
just remembering we were discussing if we should move from a elected treasurer to a appointed treasurer. I believe it was Member Steele who pointed out that appointed treasurers tend to get paid more, and that was a consideration. And I would like to congratulate Member Steele on accurately predicting that.
Thank you, Member Steele, and thank you, Jay. We had a good conversation a couple of years back about treasurer.
Thank you for the mention.
Doing a phenomenal job. Just look at our interest income.
The the warrant committee has taken note
She's worth that.
of the
She's worth
increase.
that increase in the salary.
Yes.
Question about that.
Uh-oh.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Sorry. I said it, Dick, I make these comments and then it spirals. Like, I think they're innocent and.
Well, they are, kind of. But is she?
I think at the time when there was no way to know who would be elected. So it wasn't if I could point out, it wasn't a personal, it was an objective opinion about how salaries would go, no matter who the individual was that had that position, period. And I have heard,
She deserves it too.
yeah, things around, talk around town that people are very satisfied when they go to the treasurer's office, so that's good.
Thank you, Judy.
So my question is she investing in different instruments than previously was investing? Like, how much of the increase in income that we've seen is because of the interest rate environment versus the vehicles that we're investing in?
It's probably a question for her, but I do know that she manages the money on a weekly basis. And she's more looking at the cash flow and perhaps, right, has she started investing in CDs?
Yeah, and planning
Rather
based
than
on
just putting it in.
knowing where cash flow demands are and when, putting money aside if it's not needed, moving it into, when it needs to be wired out, make it available then, but otherwise it's earning, maximizing the amount of time it's earning. But I should be happy to discuss
Oh,
further.
yeah, I'll just stop by. Thank you.
All right. I don't have any other questions. It's tough for the planning board, though. No planner?
Yeah, it's a vacant position that has significant savings if it's vacant. And we are, between myself and Nick Connors, the assistant town administrator, jumping on to things to pull them off the assistant planner's plate so that she's able to focus her energies on the planning board and we're able to pull some of the more extraneous boards and committees off. But between the town planner and the assistant planner, and when Tim and Josh were there, and when Tim and Cheyenne overlapped, they support a number of boards and committees, so our ability to support those will be affected for sure, and maintain a little bit of, having free nights every once in a while. So where we're going to spread that a little bit, but it will have an impact. We've advertised the position a few different times and haven't been able to attract kind of the town planner caliber where things stand presently. Hopefully, if the override is approved, we can repost the position and get somebody in there. But for now, we haven't been able to bring that person on board.
Sure. Thank you. Next article. Operational budget, boards and committees.
Yes, so again, not much change year over year. These are a few boards and committees that have budgets appropriated to themselves. I just will note that Council on Aging is one of them. If the override were to fail, the $15,000 would be a reduction in their supplies budget, which would push their expenses into their grant funds or gift funds. But that's that $15,000. And then I propose unfunding the Master Plan Implementation Committee if that were to be the case as well.
And doesn't that sunset in like October?
So in October it would end, so I expect that appropriation to in fiscal '27 likely be not needed anymore, but for '26 it may be in terms of, are they going to recommend an update to the master plan? Will that require a cost? So I think there's a few last projects that would be potentially wrapped up in that for fiscal '26, and then that committee is supposed to sunset in October, so we're awaiting their recommendation.
So wouldn't they not need as much since it's not a full year if it's sunsetting?
Well, if it's an update to the master plan, it might be one project for that amount. It
Got
just
you.
kind of depends on what their recommendation is.
Got you.
Yeah, Liz, please.
With respect to the bylaw review committee, so it looks like it was 0 in 2024 and then appropriated 5,730 in 2025, and then it's back to 0. My understanding is that they haven't met in a few years. What is this $5,730?
They had requested it last year. It was appropriated last year.
For
and
what?
For administrative assistance
Oh.
for their committee.
Okay.
So if they come forward with a need, we'll work with them to support it within the other town appropriations. But for right now, I haven't recommended including a dedicated amount for them.
So I see like the appropriation and then there's no like for actual for 2025, so.
They haven't used it year to date. They didn't use it in the prior year. I believe it was appropriated in fiscal '24 as well, just the spend was 0.
Okay.
Everybody ready to move on?
I don't know.
Sure, take your time.
So for B, for the Council on Aging for transportation, so I know that I had brought up the van before, so you said that they got money for that from the state.
Yes, Senator Timilty had secured an earmark of $70,000 for a wheelchair accessible minivan.
So what is this transportation then expense?
This is their line item for transportation costs throughout their operating year.
So,
Yeah, so they have employees, one of whom is covered under salaries and wages. Several of the other part-time drivers are covered out of one of their state grants. And then the operating costs that are what you see here for transportation, whether it's fuel or cleaning and everything.
Okay.
Do all the other departments, I'm trying to remember, have like fuel for their cars? It's all under there.
Correct.
But do they, but we didn't.
No, sorry, it's centrally budgeted, right, fuel and oil,
Even like
and charged back to the departments.
It is based on their usage. They have like keys that go in the pumps, so it is charged off to the departments, but we don't break it out.
It's not to break it up, but
Articles.
each department has a line within their budget for it. And it's charged off by DPW.
And how come this one is different?
And you will see this, and I should have said this at the outset, that we have tried to make this warrant more similar throughout. And the Department of Revenue, when they did their financial management review of the town, said, when you're appropriating budgets, it should be a salary and wage line and a general expense line. So we've tried to consolidate those, but there have been times in Milton where folks have wanted certain line items broken out separately because it's an issue that they want to see clearly funded. And this is one of those where transportation is something that has been historically a separate line, although it could easily be rolled into the general expenses line. It just means if they spend $6,500, they have to come to the select board and the warrant committee for an end of year transfer because they can't go over that $6,000 without those two boards approving.
Ready to move on? Next article, Public Works.
Yes, and I know Marina was here. This is their budget, and I believe she discussed the impacts to her budget if the override were to fail. And I didn't, just so the committee's know, this is just the 2024 annual town meeting comment. We didn't make any changes to that. I added a few bullets on the reductions if the override is not approved, but otherwise, that's just the message from last year in case anybody's working on that one.
Go with TPW. Water Enterprise.
So this is the first of our 3 enterprise funds, water, sewer, stormwater, covered by rates on ratepayers. Not significant changes here year over year in both salaries and wages and general expenses. However, our debt service is jumping based on some debt service that's hitting the books for water. As with sewer, when we go to borrow and fund capital projects, we do so by borrowing from the MWRA, and we're able to do so at a 0% loan. However, it's paid back over 10 years. So we have a couple of water main projects that were completed that are showing up in the debt service in fiscal 26.
Nick, were those like pipe replacements in the town on Adams Street? Was that that project?
Yeah, there are a few recently completed. One down in the area of Thompson. I have the list else.
Oh, okay, I was just curious. I was just thinking 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. These would have been completed in the last 18 months
Oh,
that
okay.
we're borrowing for now. And
Okay.
the debt service is showing up now.
And Nick, everything that's borrowed from the MWIA program is a 10-year max?
10-year payback, but 0% interest. And depending on the year, some of the offering may be grants as well. So they may offer some grant funding. But for the most part on the water side, I believe it's partial grant, partial loan.
Your water coming in, now going out. Sewer.
Can I go back?
You can go back to water.
No.
You're late on the buzzer.
Water's
All
cheaper.
night long. What is going on here?
There's a little time warp between.
I just want to say no.
A little bit.
That dad joke that you
10-second
just.
delay.
I need a coffee, it's late, oh my God.
She's so stuck over there. I'm still commenting about the joke he made.
When you read a chapter ahead, then you'll be on.
Well, I could, but then I had to do some gazintas. The Public Works General Expense, I think is that the salary line? The salary line? Public Works General?
It's everything.
So it's only going up 1.3%, which is light, I guess, considering
It's actually,
the 1906 plus the 112.
Yeah, it's a minimal increase year over year.
keep in mind the set aside for the union employees
still
in a
over
different
here.
article, so
All right,
that would only be steps and lanes.
Okay.
And they've had a lot of turnover too, so.
All right.
You have some newer employees that are at lower steps than perhaps where those positions were budgeted last year.
Thanks, sorry. I'll try to keep up.
We did, if we're on it, so we did increase vehicle maintenance because that's a place where the department has been under a lot of pressure on cost. So that is a place where we've, the level service budget did go up significantly on vehicle maintenance. But as a whole, the DPW budget isn't up. I think it's a couple of percent overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, but I just.
And I will say though, in fiscal, I believe it's in here, but our collection for trash contract goes out to bid at the end of fiscal '27. So that is we're locked in for another year or two, and then that will be a cost pressure coming up.
I'm sorry, can I ask what you just said? I thought you said a few minutes ago, all departments were getting 1.5%. So,
If you
are there
take
exceptions?
town departments overall,
Oh,
added together
town,
as a
okay.
whole, the town departments as a whole are going up. Within that, in the non-override, some may creep up more than others.
Thank you, thank you.
Very good. Sewer?
Yes, similar conversation to water, not a significant change year over year in expenses. We did zero out that capital outlay appropriation. This is an appropriation that we haven't really used. Capital outlay is kind of a misnomer anyway. It's more for like small projects the department would do that wouldn't rise to a full capital project. We have had not the greatest experience in recent years on revenues for sewer, where our expenses are jumping from the MWRA assessment. As you can see, since '24 to '26, we're up $1 million. So that's putting a lot of pressure on the sewer enterprise fund. And our revenue forecasts haven't been as accurate as we would like them. So in order to reduce our expenses in '26, we're zeroing out that capital outlay line. So we can therefore anticipate a lower fee increase on sewer. As it stands, we'll still have a decent increase year over year, but we're just trying to mitigate some of that. On the other hand, water is in a much stronger financial shape, so we're hopeful that, the combined bill will be able to be offset by a lower water bill, but I would expect another increase on the sewer side just to get that enterprise fund to a higher level. Since it's paid by the ratepayers, the first backstop is the sewer enterprise fund has its own free cash account, just as any of the enterprise funds do. So if in a year where our expenses are higher than our revenues, it first dips into the sewer free cash or retained earnings. But if expenses really outpace revenues and put pressure on that retained earnings, the next backstop is free cash. So if enterprise fund goes really in the red, it could impact our own free cash certification for the general fund. So it's a place where we have to be careful. And so we're trying to be a little bit more careful this year with that capital outlay appropriation in light of a $500,000 increase in the MWRA assessment.
You know where salaries are going up? 10%, is that a step?
It would have been absorbed just with the union contract going up and then steps in grades going up. There wouldn't have been there's no personnel being added.
Nick, does that increase include Chase Berkeley's replacement?
Yes, I mean, her position is funded through the DPW, and a portion of her salary is with any DPW employee is allocated among these enterprise funds. So she's on and funded in this budget.
Gotcha. Thanks.
You good with sewer, everyone? Stormwater, the third of our enterprise.
And everybody's favorite.
Of course. Let's talk rainwater.
Again, in terms of salaries and debt service, not a lot of change there. There is a $100,000 increase in general expenses for a discrete project. As we clean the storm drains, we collect the materials on site at the yard that has We are running out of space with which to store those. We have not stayed on top of disposing of them. So the department's looking for a bump in the budget to, put a big dent into the materials that we've collected and removed from storm drain systems, and then get into a place where they're able to stay on top of it better on a year-over-year basis. So that $100,000 increase is to fund removal of catch basin materials, get it to a more manageable point, and then we'll be able to dial that back for future years and just stay on top of it going forward.
Do the organizations that make pilot payments get the stormwater as well?
Everybody pays. So anybody with impervious service gets a stormwater bill from the town, including the town and schools, Milton Academy, Curry College, Department of DCR. We send DCR a bill. They don't pay it, but we send it to them.
Seriously?
They don't pay it?
No, the state would pay a local.
How much do they
I
owe?
love it.
How much do they owe right now in arrears?
Several years.
Yeah, I was on the committee that worked on these fees, and so like in the first year, what we were told was DCR said, we handle our own stormwater. No, we deal with it.
Well, that's
So
totally not.
I didn't know we were still sitting in a bill. I thought we'd
sitting in
give
the
it
bill,
up.
so-
Okay.
So they
Keep
owe,
sending them.
so they owe us money, and we're giving them CPC funding for a building.
Oh,
That's a good connection there too. Yeah.
right. And
Makes sense.
Well, yeah. I don't know if DCR is in support of that project. That's the nonprofit applied for the CPC funding. So
that Holmes.
yes,
How do they handle their own stormwater?
Yeah, how do they handle
goes
it?
into Houghton's Pond maybe. I don't know.
Do they truck it out? Like,
Yeah, what do they do?
It's all in Houghton's Pond.
I'm like,
Our own stormwater. Aren't you handling your own stormwater?
Oh, I do.
Of course I do.
I'm not sure I get that logic.
And the bill went up this
Bill always goes
quarter. It went up. It went up by a third.
I'm handling it.
A lot.
It was up year over year.
Yeah, it was like $50 and it was like $80 this quarter. It went up.
Did you add impervious surface to your property?
No,
Maybe we just realized you had more
maybe
than you thought.
DCR is using it, yeah.
Google updated their maps.
Yeah.
We do have
On my
a new mapping tool that we use to find it. So
Thank you.
Excellent.
we get new quarterly satellite shots that is used to
Wow.
come up with those bills.
I love stormwater.
Are those
talk.
audited?
Water talk.
Can I ask a question?
You may, Judy.
Thank you. On stormwater. Can you help me remember who sets the stormwater rates?
The select board does, usually in August of every year.
And they find the rate using a formula of fill in the blank.
Yeah, we take the change in impervious area against the change in the budget, look at past revenues and set the fee based on those three factors.
Okay, so if you could walk me through it, like I'm still at elementary school, okay?
Oh, sorry.
It's not just plucked out of the air, like, let's.
No, so
let's
if the
get up by
budget,
1%.
right, if the stormwater budget goes up 5%, as a baseline, we would expect the fee to go up 5%. However, if there's 10% new impervious area in town, that means there's more people to charge, then the fee may not go up by the amount the budget changes. So it fluctuates year over year based on how much impervious area there is to charge and how much the budget changes in any given year.
Okay, so we, the town, make this decision to enhance our budget, perhaps, or to keep us level.
It's typically to keep us level. This year, there's that $100,000 increase that I mentioned, recommended as part of this year's budget.
And that will keep us level?
Yeah, moving forward, that would, yes, moving forward.
For a year? Or how long do these do they do it every year?
The fee changes on an annual basis, yes, just as the water and
Okay.
sewer rates may and the property tax rate may.
Okay, so, as the stormwater is separate, this increase that you made is only good for 1 year. It could go up again next year?
It could, but my expectation is it would actually go back down because what we're looking to fund is like a more or less a one-time cleanup of the yard and then reduce that appropriation so we're staying in better shape year over year rather than asking for a big increase year over year.
Okay, thank you. That explains.
Okay.
Not to belabor the point, but it looks like DCR has their own stormwater management program. So does that mean that they pay into a state fund for their own
I don't know.
DCR properties?
They might have a management plan that's how they're going to try to address it. I don't know if they, I don't know the answer.
I'm still fascinated why do they say they don't have to pay?
I don't think towns are able to levy. You don't view it as a fee that they have to be, towns can levy against them.
I don't view it as a tax that the town can levy against me, but I still pay it, you know?
That's
I mean,
a good
I don't really
defense.
feel that way, but,
I'm gonna say that next time I have a stormwater.
yeah, what if you get a parking
Can't levy
ticket?
it against me.
I don't view you as being able to levy this fine against me, but I'm still gonna pay it? Okay.
Write DCR on it.
Right, and then RMV will come after you.
Right.
Exactly.
Can't renew your
How much
registration.
does the impervious go up every year?
Not significantly. I think it was a couple of percent last year. This year it'll probably jump differently because 7-Eleven Randolph Ave. The East Milton 40B wouldn't really change it much because that was already parking lots and buildings. But some of these projects that are building upon
East
less
Milton.
utilized
Residents.
land.
Tons of trees.
Residents at East Milton, that's substantial concrete going in, right?
No, but it's not replacing it's not a green field there.
Okay.
So you know what I mean? So like whereas 7-Eleven Randolph Ave, which is next to the DPW yard, that was,
Clear cut it.
it's clear cutting of what had been more
I gotcha.
wooded.
So 440 granite wouldn't qualify either, because there was buildings there before, not.
Correct. It wouldn't necessarily change the dynamic for their stormwater fee as much.
So would taking over the land for Guile for the new school, would that qualify? Because those are trees.
School, that
clear
would
cut.
be a new operating expense for that would be included in the new operating expense for that school, would be a stormwater charge.
Okay.
But that
Thank you.
wasn't calculated into that equation.
And AstroTurf too, field.
That's pervious though.
It has its own management system, right?
Yeah.
No, it drains out, but it doesn't go in the
I
ground.
don't think we're charging for it. That's a good, I don't know if we are. It's an interesting question.
Charge it all.
Are we
Well,
good?
Milton Academy has one. Or, no, they're talking about one. Curry has one. That's who has turf. Let's see if we're charging for
Academy
that.
have one too?
I don't,
They have the track.
They do, Burlston Field. It's on,
It's turf.
all right. We'll find out.
The,
Might be costing us.
the new field hockey,
It's definitely
women's,
costing
yeah,
us.
Field of Burlston.
Collecting any money.
Okay, are we good to move on? So this is, next article is rehabilitation, replacement, or enhancement of our town water systems.
Yes, and the next two are pretty similar. So these are appropriations for water capital and sewer capital. And the language, as you'll see, includes gifts or grants from the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. So they allocate a certain amount of funding to Milton. We do this annual appropriation that enables us to take advantage of the funding that they allocate to the town. The sewer one is 1.15 million, of which that is typically 75% grant versus loan, depending on the year and depending on the funding availability. So they're appropriations to take advantage of funding from the MWRA at that 0% 10-year loan, or sometimes grant money, depending on what programs are being operated then.
Everyone good? Good on the drain system? Anybody want to have anything to discuss concerning the drain system, $320,000? No? Okay. Nick and Amy, Board of Health. Health and sanitation for our next fiscal year?
So the salaries did jump, but most of these positions in this department are all in the manager's union, so their salaries last year did not reflect any collective bargaining change, so there isn't any individuals that are new there, not new positions, more just bringing those salaries up in accordance with their recent collective bargaining agreement. The reduction in $8,000 to professional services, which primarily funds their septic work. Whenever septic applications are in, they have an engineer review it, so they would likely change gears and charge higher fees to applicants in order to fully fund that work, rather than have the taxpayers support it if the override were to fail. And then the opioid appropriation, this is $155,666 that is in free cash from opioid settlements, but we have to use it for these purposes. So we're, as part of this appropriation, transferring that out of free cash essentially into a special revenue fund that the Department of Revenue has let cities and towns set up for these purposes. So that's that $155,666 appropriation in the budget.
I don't understand it. I'm sorry. Why is it an expense?
It's in free cash today. In order for the town to move it somewhere else, we have to appropriate it, call it an expense, and transfer it to another fund, just as.
Oh, because it's in this. Okay.
If I could just add a little context to it, when cities and towns first started to receive the settlement money, the Department of Revenue instructed us to record it as general fund revenues, and then after the fact, they changed the accounting treatment of it and said, no, it should go into a special revenue fund. But at that time, we had already received $155,000 that hit the general fund free cash. So we have to transfer it out of there and get it to the right fund. But it was all because of Department of Revenue changing the accounting treatment after the first year or so had already closed out. It's a one-time thing. You won't see this transfer in a future year. I don't know if that helps.
So when the money comes in the future, it'll just go directly into the
Correct.
fund?
And it has since.
Yep.
Since that day they changed it, it's gone directly into that special revenue fund, but we had to track what we had received up until that point, and it fell to free cash, got certified, and we've had to kind of set it aside until this article could be done.
So then what happens, it's going into the fund, and then where's the visibility of what happens with the money? I know there's certain requirements of how we can spend it. And how does that get determined, and again, the visibility to?
So it's a grant account, which means it's subject to, it can be spent at the direction of the select board.
Yeah.
The select board is deferred to the Board of Health and the Health Department on it. There's actively a survey being done now to assess needs and where folks in Milton want to see that money being spent to. So it's really under the Health Department's purview for now in terms of building out that plan and then starting to fund items from that plan. And there are 8 categories that these monies can be spent on in accordance with the settlement agreements between the states and the pharmaceuticals and distributors.
Everyone good? Health Department. Move on. Yes.
I just had one quick question for Nick.
Please.
When we talked to the Board of Health director, she had mentioned that the earlier plan was that if the override did not pass, they would consider having to let go of the title as health agent position. Is that still part of that plan? I couldn't tell if that's not happening.
No, that's not part of the plan. The only reduction to the health department is that $8,000 that I mentioned.
Okay, great. So I guess she was just looking at a potential role elimination that you guys found a way around.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ron. If everyone's all good with the Board of Health, we can move on to the library. See a slight increase.
Yes, their budget's been just adjusted for, again, salaries and wages with the collective bargaining agreement, and then any steps, and then some just cost of doing business increases. In terms of the contingent recommendation, if the override were to fail, the reductions would be on summer Saturday hours, Sunday hours, and then a reduction, it's an 11% cut to their books and materials account, which funds obviously their books and materials, but largely like ebook availability and the subscription services they're able to take advantage of. So those would be the impacts to the library. Otherwise, it's a level service request.
Hey, can I ask you a question about the library, or Amy?
Yep.
Just a crazy question. Not a crazy question, I guess, but they have a trust, the library, right? And we've talked about that trust here before. That generator, why wouldn't we ask them to pay for the generator out of the trust? Or is that trust for a specific, that was when it was set up hundreds of years ago? Like, do you know that?
They have offered to. We have not yet agreed in terms of how that would be done. For us, it would be more beneficial if they were to participate in the debt service payments for that than, if it's a $350,000 expense and they paid $50,000 of that, okay, now we're still paying for it over 20 years, but if we're able to reduce the cost for a few fiscal years, so that is something that they have, that has been suggested and we're looking at in terms of the generator. But the capital appropriation is for the total cost of it, and then it could be offset before the debt service shows up in the town budget.
Oh, okay, great.
A
Brian, do you
lot
have
of
a-
money in the trust is already, it's designated for certain things, so they can't spend it.
But facilities improvements is like one of those things.
Yeah,
There are
that's
other
right.
programming that they go after, but facilities improvements is something that they've used their trust funds on.
I would think they'd try to use some of the money to fix the electrical system, so they don't need to buy a generator.
There you go.
That's what I was
It's an Eversource issue, not a library issue.
Yeah, exactly.
What would Nathaniel Kidder think? No more.
Candlestick.
He started the.
Too soon.
Sorry. Okay. I appreciate. Thank you for that explanation, just on the trust. Anybody have any further questions with the library?
The only other thought that came up with regards to the library was if they're only really short-term outages, then it would be more economical for them to have a short-term battery backup solution than spend $350,000 for a generator. Unless, and one of the questions I wanted to ask earlier was whether that building had some emergency designated use, in which case you want a more permanent power source.
It's not a shelter, right? It's not a designated shelter.
It's not designated to be a shelter, but it could serve as one if needed. We only have, we have one main in this town, but it's more, they're envisioning it as if power were to go down, to be able to open and provide services in terms of heating and cooling, if necessary in those cases, but not necessarily to be a shelter designated site. So I believe they looked at the battery backup piece, but I will follow up on that question. I know the library trustees have spent a lot of time and looked at different options around it, so I can get an answer on that.
Because I'm still having a difficult time it's a big number, and it's not as if it sounds like the outages that I have are intermittent and relatively brief.
I think I would agree with that.
As opposed to multi-day or day-long outages. And then they don't need to be open 24/7 anyway, so we're talking about at max an 8-hour period per day.
They have these things called UPSs, uninterrupted power supply.
Yep.
That they've done before. That's what they
Yeah.
should probably get. That's what the school should probably get too.
Right. Well, the schools have,
Significantly less money.
the schools have refrigeration for food, so I can understand the schools, but the library, not that they don't need power, they do, but I would think that Glover would be a priority over the library, but disagree.
And if there were an outage, wouldn't you think you guys have an outage at town hall and you're probably going home? Like, we're gonna shut things down?
Back up, we aren't going home.
You're not going home?
You have a generator here?
Yes.
You have a generator.
And that our experience has been, we're not affected on the same transmission line.
Well, I know that. I was just thinking if there's that much of a power outage and, you know, there's a snowstorm, nobody's going out.
Yeah.
We're more liable to be closed than.
Yeah, telework. Like,
And schools have a greater impact. You're out of power, you have to send
Yeah,
kids
schools,
home.
absolutely.
So I get that.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. So library is,
So I think Glover,
and I would want,
Like you said.
I would assume that you'd want to get both schools up first before a library.
and the schools have food, right, for the cafeteria, so there's refrigeration issues. So I can see that being a priority, whereas maybe staff.
I mean, it's a logistic issues, like
Yeah.
school's closed, you have to get all the kids. A library,
Yeah, I like I've tried to characterize, I think it's a nice to have. I wouldn't
course.
categorize it necessarily as a critical need. In terms of what the warrant committee can do, just so it's clear, it's your recommendation at this point. The capital improvement planning committee has made their recommendation. It's the warrant committee's recommendation. The warrant committee can't add a capital project without the capital committee's recommendation. So to add an additional school and a project, that's not within this committee's purview on this article, because that has to flow through capital in the first place. The warrant committee could say, we've heard the request of the library, we understand what the request was about, but we're not recommending that it go forward, and it would come off this list here, if that is the direction the warrant committee wants to go. So just well within your rights. So I just want to make sure you folks understand that.
okay, great.
They just ask, like, people here, like, I don't lose my power often, but if I do, it might be for like 45 minutes. Does anybody ever lose power for much?
Yeah, I only lose power if there's somebody hits a light pole
Sometimes.
for an accident.
I don't lose power anymore.
Once I lost it for a whole day, but that was a freak thing where usually they're pretty quick about getting it up and running, at least within a couple of hours.
Was that the ice storm when we had ice a few
No,
years
that
ago?
was it was so hot that something like a transformer exploded, and once I've seen where people have
your
crashed
fault.
into.
Oh, yeah, accidents, car accidents
The
caused.
car accident caused it, but even that one they got faster than when it was so hot that the transformer usually it's very quick to go back though, I find.
Even
Yeah.
for schools, I wonder. if it's-
No, but you can't keep a school open without power
Yeah.
for,
Actually, yeah. The winter, no.
okay.
We can,
Sorry to,
oh, no, it's good conversation. Let's just note this when we come back to our capital budget. I'd like to move on to cemetery, if we could.
Yeah, not a lot of change here. Again, impact on the salary side in terms of seasonal assistance, overtime assistance, not affecting an employee, an incumbent employee.
So any cuts what would the cut be to the cemetery? Nick?
35.
35?
35,000 in terms of seasonal help and overtime allocation.
Judy, did you have anything you wanted to mention about cemetery?
When I interviewed her, and I think I've already talked about this with Nick, they're staying at level budget. They do a lot of their own work themselves down there in terms of pruning and trimming the trees. They only have to bring in hunts when there's a major storm, and we need that big wood chipper going. Is there stormwater? Is there a gas that it's $11,000 for stormwater? And that's why I think I've been pursuing this stormwater, because it was the top item on their budget. So seems like there's a lot of grass down there. I mean, it's a cemetery. But those little roadways, because they have 3 buildings. The house they rent out, the little office house, and then the big barn-like structure that holds their equipment. But, and that was the most outstanding thing on their budget that, seemed, not odd, but, troublesome for them. I'll just use the word troublesome. And other than that, I think our cemetery is in great shape down there. The department head is very innovative with her staff, helping to improve the cemetery as we see it when we go down to walk or just go to sit and visit there. And that's it.
Thank you, Judy. Oh, Peter first, then Brian.
What does it cost to be buried in the cemetery?
I don't have the sale in front of me.
There's a revenue stream, though, that goes with the cemetery, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
Can I
And, I
jump
mean,
in
they
a
have
little?
10 employees. It's a well-funded operation.
You can
I
pre-purchase
can
plots.
jump in a little bit there.
No, you can't. You have to be dead in order to buy. You can't buy it years in advance.
What?
You can't.
There's family plots
Yeah,
there.
they changed that.
Yeah, you can.
No, you can't have one if you're like, don't have a family though. Like if I wanted to do it, you can't. Like a totally new person.
I think you
No,
can
my
now.
parents tried to. They
People
said
buy
no.
plots all the time.
Can I jump in for a minute?
Yes, Judy, why don't you jump in? See what you have to say.
Okay.
What? My parents.
The average cost of a single plot down there runs $2,000, $2,500 perhaps. You can buy ahead in a sense if, in the effect of, if your spouse dies this year, but you wish to catch up with them at a later time, you can buy that plot ahead because it now becomes connected. Does that make sense, Liz?
Yes, thank you.
But if I wanted to go in and say, you know, I think I'm good for another 45 years here, what you got? Looking to buy. That doesn't happen anymore. And that's simply because of space constraint. They're trying to preserve space for town residents for as long as they can. And they do have a new section down there for cremations, and it's just lovely. And so that is going in a way to preserve space. Someone would not need an in-ground necessarily for a cremation. And they have benches, and Lisa Ahern runs the cemetery, and her prior job experience was at Cedar Grove Gardens, which most of the flowers around us come from there for these events. And she just has a wonderful knack of creating a peaceful environment through plants and placing them. So, but that's the answer. It wasn't to be mean to people or whatever. You could also pre-buy, like if you had an adult child that was still your dependent, right, so you could one of the three deceases, you can pre-add the other 2 spaces that you would need to complete your family resting place. Okay.
This is sad.
Thank you.
And you don't necessarily have to already be deceased. You can bring down hospice papers that your family member is in hospice, and that you can start the process right then and there to acquire a space. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Anybody have any more questions about cemetery, Brian?
I don't think the totals are right. I don't know if it's missing a line.
In the 24?
Well, yeah, 24 and 26.
Yeah, something's up.
18, yeah, I don't know. I'll check them.
It's just an odd thing, just like general expenses in 24 were 41,000, and went up to 149. Is that? Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's probably 141. Okay, never mind. Yeah, I think 26 wasn't totally right either.
35 grand didn't come out.
I think.
Oh, yeah, this 819, 144 in the non-contingent
Yeah.
should be 784, 144. But the total of 933, 187 is.
Okay.
And then we think there's a typo in the actual 24 column. More than likely, that should be 141, 643, but
Gotcha.
I don't
Yeah,
have
that's right.
those numbers with me. Yeah, 141, 643.
Good on cemetery?
No, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm looking back at the Article 2, 3 people, the 8, the list of people. The cemetery folks, did I just have them, are working like 40 hours versus the 37 and a half, which looks like it's more the office.
DPW and
And-
frontline.
yeah,
40
yeah,
hours.
right.
Yep.
What are the hours? What hours do they work versus?
I don't know what the cemetery does. Are they 7 to 3:30?
It's something similar
4,
to DPW. I'm just not exactly sure.
It'd be like 7 to 3:30, Monday through Friday.
Parks and Recreation.
Not a huge increase year over year. The reduction, if the override were to be not approved, is the part-time employee who manages the Wildcat Den or the youth center, which is for middle school students. So that position would be unfunded under the general fund without the override. That's that 26,494. That position is funded to be on staff from September to June to coincide with the school schedule. So it's not a full-time position.
I have a question about that.
Sure, Liz.
Do you happen to know how many people use the Wildcat Den?
It fluctuates. It also depends on the individual running it. So we've had different experiences with different individuals who have managed it. And obviously with the kind of hours and the setup, it's been hard to retain staff. I think they're down to a handful of people on a, if you want to call it a regular basis. I think that's about right.
Has any thought been made to making it available to other age children?
When it was established, it was done very intentionally for that middle school age group. I don't know where the Parks Department is in terms of talking about expanding that or changing that, but I know it was really for that middle-aged cohort and staying away from the high school because potential, it's a more challenging environment there. But between the programming there, the programming that they do at the library, there is a decent amount on offer. Which I'd have to defer to Kevin Chisholm and Paul D'Amato on that.
Can you tell us what these special needs programs are? This $2,000.
Again, that's a historical appropriation folks like to see in the warrant. So it's to support the programming that Parks and Recs does on a regular basis, but that's a dedicated amount for it.
Tom and I can tell you about a town meeting that ground to a halt because that line was not in the warrant.
Yep.
7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just want to add that they actually spend more than $2,000 on those programs, but they fund some of it out of their other, like, revolving funds.
Yeah. It's a nice program. Good memory, Jay. This is a bad one. If everyone is good on parks, we have our consolidated facilities.
Consolidated Facilities is responsible for managing all town and school facilities. So the way that works is all of the staff are funded out of this budget. The expense line that you see is for primarily town buildings, the school expenses, the school building includes the expenses for the school buildings within the school appropriation. That being said, these funds can be spent town or school, but that's primarily the breakout. The impact here is what we're looking at is clawing back a position that was recently hired if the override is not successful. Some of the expenses reflect just their cost of doing business has gone up significantly in recent years. So we're just trying to level set that budget so that they can maintain what they typically provide on a regular basis. But you'll see that it's mostly a reallocation from salaries down to general expenses. And we've added 2 new facilities in terms of the fire headquarters is a new building and the animal shelter is opening soon. They got their certificate of occupancy this week, so that building will be coming online soon.
One of the things that came up when Ms. Fernandez came in was that there were a lot of town building facilities or other facilities that were being charged back to the public works, or was it public works?
Like this building.
Like the utilities for this building. Why isn't that charged back to appropriate departments?
So in DPW, they have like their pump stations, they have the buildings down at the DPW yard, essentially within DPW. They also have town hall. But otherwise, the other departments have their own facilities. It's been a legacy, it's been that way. We've had 3 consolidated facilities directors in the last 3 years, so it's a conversation that we've been having is what is the right way to set that up, but there's been turnover, so we haven't committed to one system or another. It's something that we've talked about in terms of who should have responsibility for which building and where. Right now, we haven't moved things around. Tom McCarthy is the current facilities director. I expect he'll be here for the long haul. So he's been a town employee for a long time. We've just had some turnover, so some of these changes that we've been talking about, haven't pulled the trigger on yet, just because there's been some turnover and we want some consistency in terms of how we want to set that up, because it's like, who really has ownership over this building? Consolidated probably should, but we just haven't changed that. Otherwise, we've left management of buildings in terms of utilities to the department head. But there's a bigger question of, should all those costs be centrally budgeted and the facilities director be responsible for all of it? I think there's merits to that, but we just haven't really restructured everything quite yet.
That's it.
Okay, next up on the warrant is the,
I'm sorry.
sure, Brian.
And I should know, because this was on me, but general expenses are going up 100,000. That's not all the animal shelter though, can it?
No, and if you can tell, so there was a big drop in salaries and wages.
Yeah.
So there was a position, a higher level position budgeted that is now a lower level position. The savings from changing that structure flowed to the general expense budget. So a lot of the salary and wages have flowed to the general expense budget, and then there's been cost adjustments based on where they're seeing costs go right now, and additional buildings being added to the portfolio for management.
I don't understand. So the salary, I understand the salary going down, but why would expenses go up?
So we've let them adjust their budget based on where we're seeing cost trends go. In addition to that, there are 2 new buildings that are being rolled in for cleaning contracts, utilities and the like. So it's a combination of those two elements. And it's more spelled out in that, in the departmental budget with the change for the year over year.
Our next article is the school department line. Would you care to opine on that? We've yet to have a warrant committee full discussion on that matter, but I didn't know if there was anything the either of you would like to speak to in terms of the budget. I know there's a lot to talk about, but I didn't know if there was something you wanted to point
No, I
out.
just wanted to explain there was originally a different number being planned here, but with the free cash appropriation going to fiscal '25, that non-contingent recommendation was expected to be $1 million higher. But with the request from the school committee to hold on to $1 million in free cash for this year, it's come out of their appropriation in this recommendation here. So their budget would up by the 1.5% I described earlier. However, since mitigating the impacts in fiscal '26 were about the use of free cash, $1 million of which is now no longer available because it's potentially going to the '25 budget. That's where that appropriation number comes from,
That's the non-contingent.
the non-contingent number.
But their contingent total
Yep.
is the same as whatever it was.
Their request
ago.
lists the $700,000 for the stabilization fund.
Yep, okay, cool.
Does that make sense to everybody?
I have a question.
Lori?
Do we know the answer to the water bill?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, we've been working on it. So the impact to '25 is approximately $66,000 that they'll get a refund, which will reduce the expenditure. Then there's another $25,000 to $26,000 that relates to prior years that cannot reduce the '25 expenditure and has to go to general fund revenue, prior year reimbursements. So it'll eventually potentially fall to free cash.
And what was the issue?
It was, I'm not sure.
The water meter is what.
Yeah, it
There
was
was
when the new meters got put in.
Two issues. One is the specific kind of meter is an unusual meter for such a large facility, and there was basically a billing error as a result of the way the meters are set up. That was exacerbated by what appears to be a leak sometime in the last 3 quarters, that their usage is now really high, but when it shows up through the billing error, it looks like it's compounded even more. So it's noticeable because of the leak, which Consolidated is working on to address. They found a few issues that they're working to fix, but a lot of it is due to the way the billing was incorrect.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Did you say they cannot benefit from that this year?
They can only benefit, so the total credit or refund is $88,000, of which $66,000 was paid in '25.
Okay.
The rest was paid in 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. You cannot offset the current year with something that was expense in a prior year. It's not allowed by Mass
I'm
General
about accounting or you're
laws.
talking about cash?
Pardon?
Are they just, there's accounting and there's cash. So you're saying they don't get a credit for the water bill?
You
for
get a
the
full
previous year?
credit or
They do.
refund of
Okay.
$88,000, of which when I record it,
Mm-hmm.
we will reduce their expenditure in '25 by $66,000.
Okay.
The balance will go to general fund revenue.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's confusing.
No, you said that clearly a few minutes ago. Thank you.
Had it all occurred in '25, they could have used it all, but
What was the total amount that was reimbursed?
about 88,000,
88K.
86 or 88, I forget the
Okay.
exact amount. Which I just emailed that information to Katie Blake today, this late afternoon, so the school committee might not be aware of that, so I might be jumping the gun by publicly saying that, but
Late breaking news here at the Warrant
Oh.
Committee. Right? Love it. News flash.
Bad news for the enterprise funds.
Does anybody have any questions? We're going to have our discussion on schools just as to this issue. And we can stay, if everyone is all set in the committee, we can stay on schools and talk about our Blue Hills Regional Vocational School.
This is an annual assessment based on their budget that they assess to their member cities and towns. This number's bounced around in the last couple of years. As you can see, the enrollment has bounced around. It primarily just flows with the enrollment. But their overall costs have gone up just as ours have. So it's about $130,000 increase, and they have 5 students more this year than last year. But again, that could jump next year. If there's 10 more kids there, it could drop if there's 10 fewer students. So it really depends on what Milton students enroll or not at Blue Hills.
Okay. But
Jay then Macy?
I'm going to get the name wrong. The Aggie school, how do we pay for that?
So that is
Or not?
that is within the school appropriation itself. And I think there's only 1 student there. So that's within the 70.
So then the school appropriation, okay. Okay, thank you.
just, this comment hasn't been updated yet, just so you know those numbers are, right?
I think it did. Those are the latest student, that last sentence has been updated with the enrollment numbers. I changed that. I don't know about the rest of the comment.
Are the years right?
We'll double check it, but.
Yeah.
We good on Blue Hills? That's,
Okay,
yeah, Jay,
I'm
please.
going to follow my colleague's lead and go back a second. So the $1 million of the non-contingent override, I guess I'm getting contingent and non-contingent confused. Because previously they were going to have $1 million put into a special ed stabilization fund if the override passed. Now they're saying whether the override passes or not, we need this. So that's why they're getting dinged on the non-override budget. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your patience.
Are we good?
Thank you.
And Nick and Amy, can you explain the next article to us? It's interest in maturing debt.
Is it? Okay, where to begin? So basically, these numbers are coming from the, what I refer to as the multi-year debt service schedule, which shows all the principal and interest due on the current debt that the town has. And then we look at what's been authorized but unissued as debt. So whatever's been authorized by town meeting but has not yet been borrowed. And we project when we'll borrow that based upon what project it relates to and the cash flow on those projects. And so we have actual plus an estimate for that. And then anything that we're asking this town meeting to approve in Article 4, the capital article, really would probably be borrowed in August of '27. So it would not have an impact until '28. So that doesn't have an effect on '26 at all. That makes sense? And then we break out what's related to the fire station building project because we have the debt stabilization fund for that project. So that's why we break it out. And basically what we do is we look at the maturing debt on the fire station project and we compare it to, guess I'm not going to get right. We look at how much, can you help me out on that one? Because
Capacity we have.
how much we can take out of the debt stabilization fund to supplement that. So if the debt service on the fire station project is more than, this is not going to go well, I can tell you.
Yeah. No, so this.
Right, because that's the whole.
So there's two, just to try to, it gets very confusing when we start talking about the fire station. So the first two lines are general fund and debt exclusion debt, are regular capital projects included. The fire station building project, what has been borrowed so far is just for the headquarters building. That building is now complete. We've issued a bond for that project for almost all the project, but not quite all of it. So we have a significant payment and interest in fiscal '26 and a smaller principal payment. Those will fluctuate in the next couple of years. And I know some folks have been here for this conversation, some haven't. So the way the fire station debt is set up is that before the fire station projects really took off, the town has special legislation that says we did school projects in a library in the early 2000s, in 2009 time period. As that debt service declines, we're going to tax the residents the amount we were supposed to get taxed in fiscal '18, and that delta each year will be set aside in a stabilization fund to be used to pay for the fire station projects when they come up. So there's no increase to tax bills related to the fire station project, but it's using the savings that would have been there year over year as the debt service declines on the school and the library projects. And this year, we have been putting money into that stabilization in the past couple of years. This year, we're taking some money out to offset these debt increases. And the way we've structured this bond is that it has much lower principal payments up front so that we're able to fit the debt service costs within that funding model. So these costs will be higher up front and start to decline a little bit over time. And then we'll bring on the next project, which is the East Milton Station, which is expected to start this spring. So that is like a $10, $12 million project. We will issue debt related to that, and then that will also be covered within the model set up for the fire station projects. So we have a sheet that we could share if folks want to take a deeper dive into it that shows, our estimates and expectations for that project. But that is the two lines in terms of how the fire station project is set up. So no increase to tax dollars, but instead of your taxes going down for a few years and then back up, they stayed the same for these purposes.
Can you remind us what an overlay reserve is?
Yes, the overlay reserve is an account under the control of the Board of Assessors. So every year when we set the tax rate, a small amount, depending on the year, goes into the overlay reserve to pay for abatements and exemptions and to put money aside in case there are cases that go to appellate tax board for disputes over property tax values. So the overlay will fluctuate in value, and every year we would we withdraw money from it if it's no longer needed. So right now, we have 2 outstanding appellate tax board cases against Winter Valley and Uncuity House that the town has been successful at, and they've been claiming the charitable exemption. We've been successful at holding that off, but until those cases are resolved, we have to keep money aside in case they were to be successful, and we owe them the back taxes from there.
So is there a specific reason why the overlay reserve money is going to the interest of maturing debt as opposed to anywhere else?
No
Nope.
particular
Because it
reason.
got to go somewhere. Okay.
Correct.
Did a much better job than me.
Nick, any idea on when that those cases may resolve, or is that, those are important cases?
Feels like they're never ending. So last year, so I forget the fiscal year in which the cases are based on. So I think they filed for the charitable exemption in fiscal 20 or 19. It was denied. They took us to the appellate tax board. The town was successful. They took us to court. The town was successful. Despite that, the subsequent tax year, they filed for the charitable exemption. Town said no. We went to the appellate tax board. Town council Peter Mello worked on that case. That was just ruled in our favor yet again. But they have the option to go back to court and do it all over again. So it seems to be a recurring cost for town council in order to defend on this charitable exemption question that they have filed for a couple times in a row now.
Thank you very much.
And is that MRE that's filing, or is it,
Yes.
did we just give them money?
The Affordable Housing Trust may for their expansion.
No, but wasn't it there some, it was for the food pantry, I think. Wasn't
No,
there? Or that
that's-
was Governor Stoughton.
Yeah, that's Governor Stoughton. That's
I just remember them getting money.
that's the Milton Residence Fund, not Milton
Oh, that's
Residence.
different.
For
Okay.
the
Yeah,
elderly.
all
Yes.
right, Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, different entities.
Well, Milton something, we're
Yes.
giving away money.
Okay, we all set an interest in maturing debt. On to the next, the rescinding of authorized portions of monies.
Oh, me too. This one's easy. These are things that town meeting has authorized that the town could borrow for at previous town meetings, but we no longer need to borrow for those projects. And the reason being is like the sewer MWRA, that's the grant portion. So we always authorize the total project amount, and then we get a grant for part of it, so we don't have to borrow the full amount. And then same with the Chapter 90 roadways. Previously, we had an article in the warrant to authorize a borrowing for that, but we don't really need that, so we never borrow that because it's a reimbursement program. So we don't need those authorizations. So it's more of a housekeeping.
What is a Chapter 90 roadway?
It's a program, a state program, grant program to assist municipalities with road work.
So yeah, we get like $600,000 a year from Chapter 90 that goes right into the roads that DPW spends as soon as they get it. We've been doing an appropriation for it, so in case the reimbursement is late or something changes, we need to do a short-term borrowing to close the deficit, but the rules have changed and the flexibility around when we can get that money back has been better, so we haven't needed those appropriations anymore. It's always been like a backstop appropriation, but it's state grant money. On that topic, the governor's had filed a bill, and part of her bond bill is to increase the Chapter 90 appropriation by 50%, so that would get us close to $1 million a year.
That's great.
Which would be about an increase of about $300,000 if that is approved, so we'll see.
You're just cleaning up this account, basically, right?
Yeah, just
It's unspent. Why wouldn't I'm just confused. Why wouldn't it just go into the capital, since you have like $1 million you're going to spend on roads? 1.1, I think, but.
This is just rescinding the bonding authorization, acknowledging that we'll never borrow it. It's kind of like having a credit card with a credit limit that's on your
Okay.
credit report that you want to clean
Oh,
it up
you don't
because
have the
it's
money.
reported. No, we just never.
We didn't bring the money in.
I understand.
Yeah, we have the authorization to go get it, we just haven't brought the money in yet. There's a different mechanism if we have leftover money from a project to
Okay.
clean that up.
Gotcha.
Good stabilization funds. Capital stabilization, road stabilization.
So these are appropriations into our general stabilization fund in both scenarios of a non-contingent or contingent recommendation. The goal was to just stay kind of even with where our reserves are. So that is the intent behind my recommendations on these two appropriations. And they're all from free cash.
Real good stabilization funds. Okay, Nick, this is, Amy, this is our operation, next article, our operational stabilization fund. Talk to this, speak to
This
this.
is the proposed new operating budget stabilization fund. So there's one action that'll happen, under this recommendation, there's one action that happens no matter what, which is that the stabilization fund gets established. So the first part of the recommendation is that this gets established. The second part of the recommendation is what is contingent or non-contingent. So if the override is approved, that ballot question has $700,000 in the ballot question going to an operating budget stabilization fund. So if the ballot question is approved, we now need to move that money through a town meeting action into the stabilization fund, which is accomplished by this article. In addition, we're proposing to move $2 million worth of free cash into the stabilization fund to further capitalize this account. So successful override means 700 grand from the tax levy from the override question, plus $2 million in free cash goes into this fund. If the override fails, $0 goes into this fund. So because the free cash would be used to offset budget impacts if the override fails, and because there'd be no tax levy to support it, the appropriation is zero. Hence the second paragraph, that if voters don't approve a ballot question, no appropriation shall be made to the stabilization fund.
And Nick, I know that you explained it to me, but I was unclear of it before, so it might be good to explain the 700. And if that 700
yes, right.
is a recurring amount of money that we're taking from the tax levy.
So typically, when something is included in the tax levy, it's subject to the Proposition 2.5, so it can go up 2.5% each year. So the $700,000 is included in the override. It's additional tax levy, and it's dedicated to this purpose for the stabilization fund. The town can't take this $700,000 and go spend it elsewhere. It has to, as a first step, go into the stabilization fund. To come out, it needs approval of 2/3 of town meeting. The appropriating authority for it, in terms of who sets what this number will be each year to go into the fund, is the select board. So the select board could say, we want this to increase 2.5% a year, and annually they have to take a vote to say, to increase the 700 grand plus 2.5%. And then the next year they'll come back and say, the 700 grand plus 2.5% plus 2.5%. If they feel the account is getting too full, they could say, we don't need this 700 grand, we can go down to $500,000, in which case the tax levy will be reduced and the cash flowing into the fund will be less. But if they do that, then they can only go up by 2.5% from there. And then thirdly, their option could be to say, the stabilization fund has way more money than we ever expected it, we're gonna take it down to zero, in which case it goes away, and only to increase it would require another vote of the town meeting and the voters. So it's a little complicated, but it's not a guarantee that it'll go up at 2.5% a year. I would expect it to. I would expect the board to keep it and vote it by 2.5% a year, but it's a little bit of a quirk of when you're doing an override to fund a stabilization fund, that it has a separate kind of mechanism to ensure that that appropriation is there year over year.
That's a clarifying question. So that's, are you saying that that 700,000 that's getting appropriated to the schools will be every year with 2.5? Is that?
Separate, that's a separate
Yeah.
article.
So there are three
right.
three competing, complicated pieces here. So the first is,
Why 700 then? Why couldn't you have
I know, we
701?
should have different numbers for each.
Yeah.
It's a good point. So the first one is, the second article we talked about tonight, Article 2, is $700,000 of free cash into the reserve fund.
Okay.
That is free cash, one-time money goes into the reserve fund for this fiscal year. This new operating budget stabilization fund has $700,000 from the override that would be recurring and can go up 2.5%, going into an operating budget stabilization fund for any operating expense, town or schools, health insurance or otherwise. It can go to any expense as long as withdrawals from it have 2/3 approval from town meeting.
And the other difference being Article 2 controlled by the Warrant Committee, this article,
Ultimately,
2/3 vote
Two-thirds vote of town
held by
meeting.
town meeting.
Is it also, so it could be impacted by Prop 2.5, but if the levy goes up, that it can increase beyond 2.5? Is that possible?
No, in this case, the max can increase a year. If the select board so votes, is 2.5% a year.
Thank you. That should be really easy to understand on the floor during town meeting, I
I
think.
know, we should have had
300 of your best buddies. Yeah.
$699.99.
Any other number, 701 though.
Well, I mean, the school budget with the 9.5% increase and the $9.5 million override that was also confusing the whole time too, so. The similar numbers don't help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Special education reserve fund?
Similar idea in terms of, regardless of the outcome, well, let me step back. This article is solely to set it up. So this would set up a sped reserve fund that would exist after this vote. And then if the school committee felt next year, we have enough funds in XYZ budgets and accounts, we can put $200,000 into the sped reserve fund for fiscal '27. They can just do that next year if they want to. So once this is established, the schools can, within their own appropriation, move money into it. Alternatively, town meeting could put money into it at a standalone vote, whether it's from free cash or some other source. So the intention when we first established the override strategy was that this would be capitalized with $1 million in free cash for use beginning in fiscal '26. Because they requested the $1 million in fiscal '25, we're not recommending any appropriation be made to it, but we are suggesting that it's good to have, let's put it on the books. If no money goes into it, no money goes into it, but it's there for use in future years if we're in a position to capitalize it, to give another resource for those extraordinary special ed costs and transportation costs.
It doesn't need anybody's approval except the school committees?
To put money into it from the school budget. To take money out
To take
requires
money
school
out.
committee and select board approval.
So if they save $88,000 on a water bill at Colacott, they could say, oh, let's put that in this fund.
Right.
Not necessarily if it's for special ed, but we could.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter how the money gets there. Once it's in there, now it can only come out for specific purposes with the approval of the school committee and select board. And one of the reasons other cities and towns have set these up is to say, as an encouragement to the school department, saying, don't spend your budget down to zero. Across Massachusetts, school districts are reluctant to have any money close out to free cash. So they'll adjust their budgets accordingly to spend their budget down to zero. So this gives an incentive to say, hey, you can spend it down to zero or allocate money so you get to zero, or you can, at the end of the year, if you have 200 grand left over, it won't close out to free cash. It'll go into this fund instead. So they could do that if they wanted to, and that's how some of the districts have been handling it, is if they have 100 grand left at the end of the year, they'll put it into this to hold on to for future years for these purposes.
And they can only use it though for special education?
Special ed, out-of-district tuition, and transportation costs are the three reasons.
Which is all related to special ed.
Right.
Yeah, and those are, so there are 4 statutory purposes: special ed, out-of-district tuition, transportation, and the 4th one is for recovery high schools, but that's not any program that we have here. So these are the 3 statutory purposes under the law that they're being approved.
Okay, thank you both. Moving on to the reserve fund.
We've talked a bit about it, so this is just the regular warrant committee reserve fund for fiscal '26.
Nick, can you, the number, any reason behind that,
Yeah,
the
so-
squiggly number?
We knew you were going to ask.
It was, well, it's kind of, one part of this is kind of silly, but the first part is we expected it to be $250,000. When we got our insurance renewal, it was it was less than expected, so we increased the reserve fund appropriation as a result. So the 282, 256 is a savings in our general insurance account that we had to allocate somewhere, so we allocated it to the reserve fund.
Thank you.
Because we were all balanced.
I know.
There was a missing $4,271 that we may have spent some time chasing, but
Maybe like all day.
further affected this, but we won't talk about.
I have a little,
Well, I appreciate the number. Thank you. If no one has questions as to the reserve fund itself, I'd like to move on to the authorization of the revolving fund. Article 32.
So these are departmental revolving funds where if you're taking fees or payments, you can turn around and use them for the authorized purposes with certain approvals on doing that. They all have a limit. The limits are unchanged from last year. Departments may exceed that limit with the approval of the Select Board and Warrant Committee. So we may have that. It's every once in a while we'll have that case where we'll come down with a request to have a 1-year waiver of the limit or increase of the limit. But under state law, we have to authorize the limit each year, which is what this article does.
Anybody have any questions as to the article or the table? Okay, we're almost there. PEG access.
I have a question.
You have a question about the previous article? Sorry, Lori, I did my 10 count. Please.
How come, well, maybe, I don't know. The third one, the select board, is the department. And it's fees received from rental of the facilities at the COA. Why doesn't that go to the COA?
I don't think anybody's asked, and I don't think anybody's noticed.
that's how it was established.
It's probably how it's established in the bylaw, in which case we can't change it without changing the bylaw. But we can put it on our list. I would tell you functionally, it's under Christine's control and the Council on Aging Board.
Got you.
Yeah, that's what the bylaw says, so we would need to amend our bylaw to change that.
So, as indicated by Lori, it's to the select board, but it's controlled and not used by the...
I think functionally, it's...
Practically.
Practically, it's...
Practically, I get it, okay.
So we'll just add maybe a special town meeting in August to change this bylaw?
July.
I'd appreciate that.
July 6th, 7th, it would be perfect.
Just seeing who's awake.
No quorum.
How much money is in the Conservation Commission for fines imposed for the violation of the Wetlands Protection Act?
That has built up over time. And they've announced some programs around tree plantings to start using it.
Okay.
And what about dark sky violation?
We're not there, we're not there yet. Dark sky.
Who will that go to?
Warrant committee.
Okay, I'm good.
Is there a list of these with balances? Like-
Yes, there is. We can provide it.
It's in the annual report,
Yeah, so we can get that out.
but it's as of last year.
Thanks.
Any further
Can I
questions?
ask Nick a question?
Judy?
Thank you. Nick, does Council on Aging get all of their requests in your final budget?
If the override is approved, yes.
And if it's not, what did you cut, if you could?
Supplies.
Off the top.
Their supplies budget?
Council on Aging.
Is she going back?
May I speak to that? I don't know if I'm out of turn here.
Sure, Judy.
Thank you. I spent a lot of time down at the COA, doing their budget. And how much did you cut their supplies by?
It's $15,000. It would go to a zero appropriation.
And so I imagine you, I don't see it here, and I don't know why. It's not your fault, it's my fault entirely here. They also asked for some, do you consider under that supplies the $5,000 that they asked to reinvent some of the office furniture? Or is that just
Going back
supplies
to the
like cups
previous
and
one. Go back to
supplies for events?
COA.
Hang on.
What article is she taking us back to an article? Which one?
I don't know where I'm taking us back to, but
So we're going back to 32? Okay, thanks.
and I did say that I think I'm out of turn. I'm sorry, everyone.
The Council on Aging request for $10,000 for office equipment was not funded, no. That was a supplemental request in addition to the level service budget, which we did not fund any across any town department, including those
Okay.
requested by the Council on Aging.
No supplemental. In this supplemental, was there a supply request, a supply increase request?
Yes, for office reconfiguration.
And that was it? It wasn't for the ordinary supplies of,
Nope.
you know, water and cups and whatever else they use down there?
No, it was not.
So, okay. Disappointing, for sure. Thank you. I'm sorry for that comment, but they, in my opinion, not just going there once a year to look at their budget, they do operate on a shoestring down there and accomplish a great deal, I believe, and have seen and experienced. They couldn't provide what they do provide without the volunteer help they have. And that mostly comes from, yes, other seniors, but some volunteer-minded citizens in our town that haven't reached the requirement to be a senior age yet. And I don't know, it's just somewhat disappointing that you couldn't find a few extra dollars for them. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Can I?
And I understand there isn't enough money to go around, and I do. I get that. It's like a household budget. Where do you cut? Tough decisions. Thank you for the information.
Thank you, Judy. Jay?
Can I say, just looking at the budget worksheet we got today, just looking at straight what was appropriated last year and what was appropriated this year if the override passes. The schools are going up by about 8.5%. That's a lot. It's, been shocking everyone across town. The Council on Aging is going up 10.5%. Obviously a smaller dollar amount, but I think we just have to keep in mind that all the departments are going up and all the departments are constrained by the override.
Thank you, Jay. Any comments? Okay. If we can, if we're all good on the revolving, use of revolving funds, we'll move on to the PEG access, which we're all familiar with.
Yes, this is our annual appropriation to the MPEG Access Inc., which is Milton TV, in accordance with the contract we have with them. And it's usually, the appropriation of $500,000 covers what we typically bring in on an annual basis.
Any questions? Oh, PEG access funds, pretty familiar.
There's money in the,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, please.
There's money in the reserve too on that, too.
Yes, this is where the appropriation for the old fire station room came from. So there was about $420,000 in additional funding for PEG purposes that the town has in an account
Can
today.
only use it for PEG,
And
right?
could only use for PEG, correct.
Okay. CPC, 2 articles. Their regular appropriation, and then we have their projects in the following article. So I guess start with the first, if you could, Nick or Amy.
This is based on what we estimate the revenues to be, and then they have to be allocated out accordingly to these purposes. This is more of a kind of a procedural check the box kind of article, this first one. The second one is the recommendations on how the money will be spent.
Okay, does everyone understand how 34 works? Okay, so I guess on to the next, which is the meat and potatoes of the CPC here for this coming year.
I have a question
Okay.
before we go on.
Oh, no, that's fine. I don't know if Nick or Amy had wanted to discuss any of these or all of them, points 1 or 2 out, or if you had any thoughts in general just about their requests. I know this is something we've been doing for a few years now.
No, only that we've invited the chair of the CPC to come to the select board meeting next week. I've exchanged emails with him related to the Peverly Playground project and a couple others on the list. I know the select board has some follow-up questions that they want to discuss as well in terms of projects, and we're going to plan to do that next week at our meeting.
Do you think change? Could something change?
So the way the law works is that project recommendations have to come from the CPC. The warrant, the town meeting can't increase any appropriations beyond what's been recommended by the CPC. They can lower or zero out recommendations, but they can't increase them. I wouldn't expect at this point that they would change recommendations, barring anything unforeseen.
That wasn't my question. I have another one. Is there a way to do them separately so that we could, I didn't like them all. Because primarily, I don't like the studies. Was having an issue with the studies and the non-town-owned properties.
Yes, the warrant committee, if it had a different recommendation, this is drafted as you're recommending to the town meeting that it approve all of them.
I know.
So the recommendation could approve, 8 out of 13, or for whatever number that is, and then leave the article language would still show all of them.
Right.
The recommendation might show something different.
Okay.
And town meeting could still take the warrant committee's recommendation or
Or not,
go with CPC's recommendation or some other.
So it wouldn't matter to break them apart into individual articles?
No, I don't think that would be. No, I think as long as the recommendation was clearly outlining what is recommended to go forward and not from the warrant committee, we wouldn't need separate articles for that. No.
All right, thanks.
And Nick, that's the same as the capital?
Yeah,
same
actually,
idea.
that's true.
Same thing. So we could recommend the movement of the funds.
Correct. You could recommend that projects either be not funded or funded at a lower number.
Not increase.
Town meeting can't increase any project without a CPC recommendation to do so in the first place.
So in terms of capital,
Capital,
So my recommendation, if this, considering recommending something different than what the capital committee recommended, we could try to convene the capital committee to maybe consider revising the recommendation so that everybody's on the same page. It'd be worth asking.
okay. I would just, I just
Town
wanted
meeting
to,
a lot easier. I mean, we could ask them to do that if it came down to that. They might not agree, but
procedurally, yes, this committee can do the kind of the same approach in terms of recommending for a capital budget, not moving forward with certain projects, but adding a new capital project that hasn't been previously vetted by the Capital Improvement Planning Committee would go against our bylaw. So to add something that's not on the list, no. To say, we hear this need, but we don't recommend a town meeting, you could take it off the recommendation list.
sure, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no,
before we
I
get
think
into
that's,
our
it's good to do that, yeah, agreed.
Okay, so is there anything just more? I've seen these previously with the CB. I know others have here.
No, if I have any new information to share, I'll do it with you and let you know.
Well, I think, so Nick, in saying that, would it be beneficial for this committee to green sheet this comment? Or do you, and we can talk more maybe, but I just in terms of comments for the meeting, and we can discuss further. That's what I'm thinking about.
No, if I don't necessarily know that I expect anything to change after the select board's meeting, but that it might be give you the possibility to say, let's just put this on the back burner, we'll revisit it before town meeting, but not do it tomorrow night, if that's the committee's kind of purview, especially if there might be a longer discussion about some of the projects.
Okay. I appreciate that, thank you. Anybody want to, anything else? Easements? Select board?
Yeah, we've been doing this on a regular basis with the warrant, just to give the select board the authority to accept easements. They're, this requirement that they're being done at no cost to the town. We just accepted an easement for a private way the other day with private ways, we own the water line. So that easement gives us the right to go onto the road to fix the water line if it were to break. So that's the kind of easements that are usually approved under this kind of an article at a regular basis. So they actually don't happen very often, so.
Anybody have any questions about easements?
Yeah, was this change the language at all? Is it's under, we voted on this already, right?
No. Article 36?
Yeah. Well, it says under the comment, the one I'm reading.
Oh, sorry, that's last year's comment.
Oh, okay.
The last sentence I added, because in fiscal '25, I added that. I didn't catch the first half of that.
Gotcha.
So that was the example I just gave.
Okay, if there are no questions about the easement article, we have our light trespass, number 37. One and only.
So the article you have in the warrant is based on the tweaks that the select board had made during town meeting in in February. The select board did schedule a public hearing on this article at our next meeting on April 8th. The select board is having its meeting at the Milton Arts Center, not at the Council on Aging, so that's April 8th, public hearing to solicit feedback and input on this. Conceivably, there's a chance the warrant article may change as an outcome of that at the last minute by the select board. So my recommendation to this committee would not be to take any action on it until and unless there's any changes next week, and I'll provide an update next week.
That's great. That's exactly the question I was going to ask you. I was going to see if this might be a good one to hold off on.
I agree.
That's it. And we've talked about our light trespass. You all remember when we gathered around and we looked at the amendments up by the piano. So it hasn't changed since then, correct?
The changes are in the track changes are in the warrant are changed since the town meeting.
Thank you.
Everything else has been accepted. So it's a designee matter as to who would be reviewing said violations.
Could I ask you, did the select board, a lot of these come from, but this one in particular, did they make a recommendation?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, this is probably one I think it'd be good. We asked for a public comment committee. I think we should wait for the public comment and green sheet.
Is there any expert on this? Like I don't know what a lumen is, so.
Andrew does.
Can we go about?
How many lumens is this?
A lot.
I don't know, 800 lumens? Who knows?
Looks like we have a designee.
800? 800?
Okay.
5300 Kelvin?
Yeah. We shut these out till we see the stars.
Not because there's a ceiling.
And the last articles are
The planning board one.
planning board, which
Yep.
we've already voted on unanimously in favor of.
Okay. All right, so we'll update that. What I think, I'm working with town council on this, is that the recommendation will just say, and actually it says it in this, recommended that the town vote yes. So I believe that's what it'll look like. In past warrants, the article and the recommendation were copy and pasted, and it was the exact same, so it was kind of cluttered. So I think if we can get away with just saying recommended that the town vote yes, we'll try to keep it simple and clean in the warrant, rather than have the entire article repeated just in bold. So, not trying to make too many crazy changes to the warrants,
Yeah,
but.
We'll figure out, we've already drafted some comments for that.
Okay, great.
So, okay, I don't know, does anybody have any open-ended questions for Nick and Amy? Just anything. I know there were some emails, and further information is going to be furnished, and you always have the opportunity to ask additional questions over email or phone.
Going back to light trespass, assuming that if that were to pass, nobody gets grandfathered, right?
Correct.
Because it's a general bylaw versus a zoning bylaw?
I don't know that would make much of a difference, because it's not, the dark sky one was saying these installations and furnishings on your property have to meet a certain criteria. So in terms of a zoning bylaw, if you've bought a light and installed it, and then the law changes, just like if you built a house over your setback and then the law moves the setback, you're grandfathered in. So this case, I don't know that that's the same example, because this is now saying what you have is generating a nuisance. I don't even know that it would be a zoning bylaw so much in that case at all. So the dark sky protection one, I think you could say zoning or general bylaws. This one is more of looking at nuisances being created.
Are you worried about people saying, I don't like someone's Christmas lights, holiday lights, or whatever, and then that becoming an issue? Which sounds.
I think on the dark sky protection, perhaps, and the light trespass, I wouldn't see that as possible. I definitely haven't formed an opinion on it yet. I think because of where it says what the complaint, the select board has to take into consideration in terms of determining what a trespass is, I think it steps away from the more rigid application of the dark sky protection bylaw that was also included at the February town meeting.
Tom, are we going to have someone come in and speak to these two articles? The person who proposed them?
Yeah, we had discussion. I think that really kind of goes to the potential for a green sheet. We were going to ask.
And I can bring that up at the select board meeting, that the warrant committee is seeking that somebody come in and represent the board on this.
Yeah, that would be excellent.
Okay.
I think that would really be helpful for us in
Sure.
crafting the comment, especially after the special. And,
Yep.
and that I would thank you.
Okay,
Nick.
no, I can
Appreciate that.
carry that message back.
I have a
Brian,
different
yeah.
question. Is there any consideration to reallocating healthcare costs, which is such a big thing, to all the different departments within the town? So you kind of get a feel for, because it's such a large expense, you know?
That would be an administrative nightmare for me to try to do that.
And then I would also, so if those departments have if 3 people were enrolled in family plans and there's $90,000 a year, and now they're not enrolled, those departments would have the authority to just spend that money. So by keeping it centrally budgeted for health insurance, it's budgeted for health insurance. So if it devolves out to the departments,
They couldn't put it in a reserve fund or something.
they could spend it on office supplies.
Gotcha.
You know, so I think that would be, I don't know of any municipalities that do that in the first place, and I think, we're essentially budgeting it because it's for health insurance and health insurance alone, unless we transfer the money out of it with this committee and the select board's approval to do so.
Well,
I think
that makes
that's
sense.
I think that's how it's usually handled. The state, the group commission, insurance commission handles all the insurance for the entire Commonwealth. So instead of per agency or secretariat.
You could just report on it, not
Yeah, they
budget.
Gotcha.
Because it would be grossly unfair if you do it by department anyway.
And I don't know if, some of our smaller departments with, 2 and 3 employees now, we know who's cost, who individually is exactly costing us what in terms of what their health plan choices are, which we're public employees, so we're used to less privacy than others, but that feels a little.
In government, it might be different than a company.
Right.
I think company would do it. but-
Yeah. Or the opposite of the example you gave a minute ago, if a department has 2 employees and 0 of them have health insurance, and then in November they hire a 3rd person who wants health insurance, there's no room in the budget to pay for it.
Correct. Or if just one of the employees elects, has a change in coverage, and,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
spouse loses coverage or whatever.
Children.
Members of the committee content?
Thank you.
No?
Great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So I am available tomorrow, if helpful, if necessary, if you want to let me know what you think.
I will, Nick. We have meetings scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay.
It maybe would, either of those dates, wouldn't be both, it might be one or the other.
Okay.
Maybe Thursday, I think.
Okay.
Just as an emergency, but I'll be in touch.
Yeah, no problem. And obviously, if something comes up, I can jump in on Zoom if needed, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
Okay, good.
Where do we stand with the comments?
They've been working on them, right? Comments,
Okay,
Yeah.
so as usual, if anyone
needs
needs
assistance.
help, let us know.
And I think I flagged Public Works, Cemetery, Library, Health. I didn't really touch some of the others we did update. We tried to do it with an independent view, so obviously feel free to edit away what is in there. And then feel free to reach out to department heads to help. They're happy to provide additional info that might be helpful in crafting those as needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Riveting info.
So, Mr. Chair, if we're looking ahead to tomorrow, I don't know how much we're going to get through. If we're going through each of these, as we saw tonight, each of these we could discuss.
Of course.
We could discuss a lot. I don't know if we're going to want to discuss schools. I think that's a given. I don't know if there's a way to say tonight, hey, guys, what do y'all want to discuss tomorrow? And by extension, what do we not want to discuss tomorrow? Like if people here want to say, oh, I want to discuss X, Y, and Z tomorrow. but nothing else, then we'll know, all these other articles we'll be able to go through pretty quick. Is that something we could do?
Yeah, I'm more in favor. The night is late. Been here for over 3.5 hours. I want to use our next 2 nights the best way possible. I assume, I've discussed this with Jay, I assume schools is going to take a while to talk about. There's some good and there's some bad, and we have to discuss those issues through for our comment. I think that's going to take a couple hours probably. We could probably take 4 or 5 hours on it, but we need to see what we're going to do with our time. This is our busiest week, it always is, coming up to annual. So comments are due next week. There is a chance we could meet on Monday. I'd like to avoid it. So the next 2 days, what would we like to see? Especially tomorrow. I know there are a couple of people who can't be here on Thursday night, may be interested in talking about the schools. So we can talk about the schools tomorrow, Thursday, we can vote on some of these. What's the committee feeling in terms of what would you like to see?
Well,
I know schools is a definite, we owe it to ourselves in the town. We have to talk about schools. So Liz.
Other than the schools, are there, and the capital budget maybe,
That's a good one, yeah.
were there other things that people wanted?
CPC, I'm
I thought
thinking.
we already voted on that.
We didn't vote yet.
I thought we did.
You did vote last night, I believe.
Oh, we did. So
did.
no, not CPC. I'm sorry.
So
cap.
those two, capital, because you had a lot of good questions, Brian, and about the cars and the generators, and you had good questions, and so I'd talk about that for like a little while at least, and then I don't think the light trespass has changed at all. We've already
No,
approved of
light-
the zoning.
Talk about that until we get information.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, light trespass.
Oh, yeah, because somebody's gonna come in. And then, the zoning, we already approved. So other than the schools, is there anything else?
I mean, may I suggest that we go through every line item and then do maybe half? I mean, the ones that we don't want to vote on, like schools or light trespass, we skip. So that way it stays organized and we know exactly which articles we hit. Because if we do it piecemeal, then it's going to come back to, well, I think we voted on
No,
that. I don't think we did.
this happened before. It gets really
Right, so I just
confusing.
think that maybe, so we have how many articles? 36? Is it 36?
39.
39, so maybe aim to do half tomorrow, and then the half on Thursday, and leave out schools and the light trespass and the lumens and the beavers and all that stuff.
In the
Maybe
capital
Yes.
budget.
Yeah, leave that out. The
Or
ones
could
that
we just,
But if we don't think there's going to be discussion on those other articles, we could do all of them tomorrow easily.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So,
Just keep a running list of
So just keep
1 to
going.
39
That's
and
what I suggest.
would it make sense to go through and vote on 1 through 3, then skip 4, which is capital budget, then vote 5 through wherever the hell you get to schools? Just my only concern is that if we talk for 4 hours and then no one's gonna wanna vote and we're ready to vote on 1 through 3 and then 5 through 23 and then 25 through
I like that a lot.
36.
I'll keep track of the numbers. We'll
I like
just
that a lot.
vote, cross them off as,
Well, I mean, there's
Oh,
this
that's
nice
what
little
Karen's for.
line
That's what
here.
Karen's for here for. Karen, can you hear us?
Yeah,
We depend on you.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot
I
of.
hear you, I have a spreadsheet ready.
Yes,
great.
Go through.
Okay, so,
4 out of 39.
okay.
So vote-a-palooza at the start of the meeting, and
Yes.
then,
Difficult conversations.
yes,
Anything worthy of conversations, we'll discuss.
I like that a lot.
Do we have a sense of if the member of the select board were going to come in, when that might happen?
It will be after the
After the
comments are
thing is
due. So
printed,
we're gonna
so it'll
green
be-
sheet it.
Okay.
It's gonna be a green sheet. That certainly. Okay, so
Your goal is to have comments to you, but I'm gonna ask a lot of questions.
just by like Monday,
Isn't it going to print?
And who's doing all these comments?
I'm gonna do a lot of them. I'm gonna do many of them.
I told you I'd do the lighting bylaw.
Sure. So what I'm going to do is, like, as we get through the meeting tomorrow, Brian already had done some comments. Schools are working on schools. We can kind of see who wants to do what. Liz has always volunteered to do light trespass, did a great job last time. I'd love for you to do it.
Imagine it'll be very similar.
Probably will.
Add a little more color after the discussion.
So tomorrow, we're going to come in at 7, fast and furious vote, and stop at the things we'd like to discuss. Does that
Let's
work?
skip them and then come back.
But just skip and come
Yeah.
down. Okay. So are we good with that? Okay.
I love it.
Okay. So thank you. We all set?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by
Thank
Macy.
you. Yes,
Second.
absolutely.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Thank you, Warrant Committee.